Have you ever noticed, friends, that the more you push a thought away, the louder it becomes in the mind? It is a strange paradox, a quiet struggle, that many of you face every single day. You might lie awake at night, wishing to erase a certain face, a past mistake, or a painful memory. You tell your brain to stop, to let go, to just be quiet. But the mind, quite stubbornly, refuses to obey. It brings that exact memory back, right to the center of your attention, clear and vivid. This happens, not because you are weak, but because the nature of the human mind is complex, and beautifully flawed. When you try to forcefully forget something, you are, actually, giving it more energy. Imagine a tightly coiled spring, pressed down, firmly, by your hand. The harder you press, the more resistance builds up, right beneath your palm. The moment you release your grip, the spring jumps back up, even higher than before. Thoughts are, exactly, like that spring. By fighting them, you unknowingly feed them, making them stronger, and more deeply rooted, in your awareness. There is a beautiful story, from the time of the Buddha, which wonderfully illustrates this very nature of the mind. Long ago, in a peaceful forest, there lived a young monk, named Vangisa. Vangisa was brilliant, deeply devoted, and possessed a mind, as sharp as a diamond. However, he struggled with vivid, distracting memories of his past life, long before he chose the path of awakening. One afternoon, while sitting beneath the shade of a large banyan tree, a sudden, powerful memory of worldly pleasures flooded his mind. He became frustrated, deeply upset with himself, and began to forcefully suppress these thoughts. He commanded his mind to be pure, to be empty, to completely erase those colorful images. But, to his great dismay, the more he fought, the more intense the visions became. They danced before his eyes, colorful and persistent, pulling him further away from his peace. He felt exhausted, defeated, and overwhelmed by his own thoughts. Seeing his struggle, the Buddha approached him, his steps light and silent, upon the dry leaves. The Buddha did not scold him, nor did he offer a harsh, strict lesson. Instead, he smiled gently, and shared a simple, profound truth. The Buddha compared the mind to a wild, untamed monkey, swinging endlessly, from branch to branch, in a dense forest. If a hunter sets a trap, coated with sticky sap, the monkey, out of sheer curiosity, will touch it with one paw. Finding its paw stuck, the monkey uses the other paw to pull it free, only to get that one stuck, as well. In a panic, it uses its feet, and finally its mouth, until it is completely, entirely trapped, by the sticky substance. The sap, in this story, represents the aversion, the strong, burning desire to push away what one does not want. When you resist a memory, you are like that monkey, fighting the sticky sap of your own aversion. You hate the memory, you want it gone, and that very hatred is the exact glue that binds it to you. You see, friends, true peace does not come from wiping the mind completely blank. It does not come from building a high, thick wall to keep out the things that hurt. It comes, instead, from a place of gentle observation, a quiet acceptance of what is present in the current moment. Instead of shouting at the mind to be quiet, you can simply watch the thought arise, just like watching a cloud drift across a vast, blue sky. The cloud is there, it exists, but it does not stain the beautiful sky. It moves, it changes shape, and eventually, it fades away, leaving the sky, completely untouched, and vast. The sky does not try to hold the cloud tightly, nor does it attempt to push it away. It simply allows the cloud to exist, for as long as it needs to, and then it watches it dissolve. This, friends, is the profound secret to finding peace with the things we wish to forget. We often think that forgetting is an active process, something we must do with great effort. But true forgetting, or rather, true letting go, is actually a state of non-doing, a quiet permission given to the mind to just be. When a difficult memory surfaces, painful and sharp, your first instinct, naturally, is to resist it. You feel a sudden tightness in your chest, your breathing becomes shallow, and you desperately wish to be anywhere else, but in that specific thought. The memory brings a heavy baggage of emotions, like regret, sadness, or anger. You try to erase the memory, primarily, because you want to escape that uncomfortable emotion. But emotions, everyone, are very much like the waves of the ocean. You cannot stop a wave from crashing onto the shore by holding up your hands and pushing against the water. The wave will simply knock you down, soaking you completely. There is a wonderful story concerning one of the Buddha's attendants, named Meghiya, which beautifully captures this restless struggle. Meghiya, one warm morning, was walking through a lush, green forest, and he discovered a beautiful, quiet mango grove, situated right next to a gently flowing, crystal-clear river. The air was cool, the shade was deep, and he thought to himself that this was the perfect, most ideal place to find absolute peace and to forget all his worldly troubles. He hurried back to the Buddha and asked for permission to go and sit in that beautiful grove, entirely alone. The Buddha, possessing deep, clear wisdom, saw that Meghiya's mind was not yet mature enough for such intense, solitary isolation. He gently asked Meghiya to wait, just a little longer, until another monk arrived. But Meghiya, eager and impatient to find quick peace, insisted on going right away. Finally, seeing his strong determination, the Buddha allowed him to go. Meghiya walked to the beautiful mango grove, found a comfortable spot, under a large tree, sat down, and closed his eyes, expecting total, immediate silence. Instead, to his great shock, his mind completely exploded. The moment he demanded silence, a violent storm of thoughts rushed in. Memories of his past life, old desires, deep fears, and restless worries, flooded his awareness. He was terrified. He tried to fight them, he tried to force them out, commanding his brain to be quiet, to forget all those things. But, the harder he pushed against the thoughts, the louder, and more aggressive, the memories screamed back at him. He felt like he was losing his mind, trapped in a beautiful place, but experiencing a terrible, chaotic storm, inside his own head. Defeated, exhausted, and feeling like a complete failure, he left the mango grove, and returned to the Buddha. He bowed deeply, and confessed his struggle, explaining how his mind had betrayed him. The Buddha looked at him, with infinite, tender compassion. He did not judge Meghiya, nor did he call him a poor practitioner. The Buddha gently explained that a mind, lacking maturity, and proper understanding, cannot be forced into silence. Running away from your thoughts, or trying to violently crush them, only creates a painful, exhausting battlefield, right inside your own heart. Instead of fighting, the Buddha advised him to anchor his awareness, to cultivate good qualities, like patience, and clear observation. He taught Megillah that when an unwholesome thought arises, you must simply know that it has arrived. You recognize it, you look at it clearly, without judging it, and without judging yourself for having it. You see, friends, the mind is constantly producing thoughts, just as a tree constantly produces leaves. You cannot be angry at the tree for dropping leaves onto the ground. Think about a busy guest house, everyone. Imagine that your mind is a large, welcoming guest house, located on a busy road. Every single day, many different travelers come walking down the path, and they knock on your door. Some of these travelers are joyful, bringing beautiful laughter, warm light, and happy memories. Some are angry, carrying heavy, muddy boots, tracking dirt all over your clean floors. Some are deeply sorrowful, weeping quietly, in the dark corners of the room. If you are the wise owner of this guest house, you know that you cannot control who walks down the public road. If you try to lock the door, when a difficult, painful guest arrives, they will just stand outside, and bang loudly on the wood, disturbing your peace even more. If you open the door, and try to physically fight the angry guest, they will shout louder, and cause a terrible scene, breaking your furniture. If you try to aggressively, forcefully throw out the sorrowful guest, their tears will only stain your floors deeper, and you will feel exhausted. The wise, peaceful owner simply opens the door, and greets every single guest, exactly the same way. You look at the painful memory, and you say, "Ah, you are here today, I see you clearly." You allow them to come inside, and you let them sit, for a while. You do not offer them tea, you do not sit down and engage in endless, dramatic conversations with them, but you also do not try to physically push them out the door. You just let them occupy a seat in the lobby, while you continue, quietly, with your own daily tasks. Eventually, because they are merely travelers, they will grow tired, they will stand up, pick up their bags, and they will leave, all on their own. Memories are, quite literally, just temporary travelers, passing through the vast, open guest house, of your beautiful, capable mind. The primary reason we cannot seem to forget, the reason the memories stay so long, is because we are constantly interacting with the difficult guests. We sit right next to them, we argue with them, we cry with them, we beg them to please go away. All of this intense attention, all of this emotional energy, is exactly what makes them unpack their bags, and stay longer. When you simply observe, without reacting, you are practicing a very high form of letting go. You are recognizing the profound, undeniable truth of impermanence. In the Buddhist teachings, there is a core understanding that absolutely everything, in this universe, is constantly changing. Nothing stays the same, not even for a single fraction of a second. This includes the cells in your body, the leaves on the trees, the water in the river, and most importantly, the thoughts inside your head. Even the most painful, sharpest memory has a specific beginning, a middle, and an inevitable end. Sometimes, we hold on to painful memories because we feel, deep down, that we need to punish ourselves. We replay our past mistakes, over and over again, in full detail, because a quiet, hidden part of us, believes we do not deserve peace. We think, if I forget this mistake, it means I am a bad person, it means I do not care. But friends, holding on to guilt, does not fix the past. It only destroys the present moment, robbing you of your natural joy. True repentance, true growth, comes from recognizing the mistake, learning the valuable lesson, and then gently, kindly, putting the heavy burden down. Imagine you are holding a glass of muddy water. You want the water to become perfectly clear, so you can see through it. If you plunge your hand into the glass, and try to quickly grab the dirt, and pull it out, what happens? You only stir up the mud, making the water cloudier, and darker, than it was before. The only way, the truly effective way, to clear the water, is to simply set the glass down, on a steady table, and leave it completely alone. You do nothing. You just watch. Slowly, steadily, gravity pulls the heavy dirt, down to the very bottom. The mud slowly settles, all by itself, simply because you stop disturbing it. Your mind works in the exact same way. When you allow your thoughts to just settle, without any harsh interference, clarity naturally returns, completely on its own. You do not have to force the mind to be pure, friends. You only need to stop stirring the heavy mud of your past regrets, and your anxious worries. It sounds simple, does it not? Yet, it is, perhaps, one of the most challenging things that a human being can practice, in this vibrant, noisy world. We are deeply conditioned, from a very young age, to fix things, to solve problems, and to actively push away anything that causes us discomfort. We treat our own memories as if they are broken machines, needing to be dismantled and thrown away. But the human heart, everyone, is not a machine, and your beautiful, complex mind is certainly not a garbage bin meant to be emptied by force. To understand why we cling so tightly to the things we desperately wish to forget, we must look at a very subtle, hidden habit of the mind. We remember, quite often, because we attach a strong sense of identity to that specific memory. You see, when someone hurts you with a cruel word, or when you experience a painful failure, your mind creates a little story about that event. The story usually revolves around a central character, and that character is you. The mind whispers that you are the victim of that harsh word, or that you are a failure, because of that one specific mistake. Over time, without even realizing it, you start to believe that this painful story is actually who you are. If you were to completely forget the memory, a quiet, frightened part of your ego feels like it would lose a piece of its own identity. It is a strange, delicate paradox, friends. We hate the pain, yet we hold on to it tightly, because the pain is familiar, and it tells us a story about our own existence. There is a deeply moving story, from the ancient texts, regarding a young, handsome prince named Nanda, who was actually the younger half-brother of the Buddha himself. Nanda was profoundly, entirely in love with his beautiful bride-to-be, a woman known throughout the kingdom for her unmatched grace. On the very day of his wedding celebration, through a series of unexpected events, Nanda found himself ordained as a monk, leaving his glorious palace and his weeping bride behind. As you can gently imagine, Nanda was physically present in the quiet monastery, wearing the simple robes, but his heart and his mind were completely trapped in the past. He could not meditate, he could not listen to the teachings, and he certainly could not find any peace. Day and night, he was tormented by the vivid, colorful memory of his beloved bride, exactly as she looked, brushing her long, dark hair, with tears shining in her eyes, as he walked away. He tried everything, in his limited power, to forget her. He sat perfectly still, tightly closing his eyes, chanting loudly, trying to scrub his mind clean of her beautiful image. But, as we know, the harder he scrubbed, the brighter, and more radiant, her face appeared, in his sorrowful mind. He was miserable, friends, completely consumed by a memory that he was desperately trying to erase. He was fighting a war, inside his own heart, and he was losing, every single day. The Buddha, with his boundless, gentle compassion, saw Ananda suffering so deeply. Now, the Buddha did not approach Nanda, and tell him to simply try harder, to just forget the girl, or to forcefully empty his mind. He knew that demanding a person to forget their deepest attachment, is like asking a river, to suddenly flow backward, up a steep mountain. Instead, the Buddha took Nanda on a journey, utilizing his extraordinary abilities, to gently shift Nanda's entire perspective. First, the Buddha brought Nanda to a scorched, black forest, that had recently been destroyed by a massive fire. Sitting on a charred, ruined stump, was a poor, ugly little monkey, missing half of her fur, burned, and miserable. The Buddha asked Nanda to look closely at the monkey. Then, instantly, the Buddha transported Nanda to a magnificent, breathtaking celestial realm, filled with radiant, divine beings, possessing a beauty so profound, so completely otherworldly, that mortal words could never describe it. After letting Nanda observe this incredible, expansive beauty, the Buddha asked him a very simple, yet powerful question. He asked Nanda if the bride he left behind was still the most beautiful being he could possibly imagine, compared to these divine beings. Nanda, completely honest, admitted that compared to the vast, incredible beauty of the celestial realm, his memory of his bride was just like that poor, burned monkey, sitting on the ruined stump. In that exact moment, friends, something profound shifted within Nanda's mind. The Buddha did not erase the memory of the bride. The memory was still there, sitting exactly where it had always been. What changed was the way Nanda viewed the memory. By expanding his vision, by seeing a much larger, grander picture of existence, the intense, blinding grip of his past attachment naturally loosened and fell away. The memory lost its overwhelming power, not because Nanda fought it, but because he saw beyond it. This is exactly what happens when we are trapped in a painful cycle of remembering what we wish to forget. We are standing far too close to the painting of our own lives. If you stand just 1 inch away from a massive, beautiful canvas, and you stare directly at a single, dark, black brushstroke, your entire world, your entire reality, becomes consumed by that darkness. You might think that the whole painting is ugly, ruined, and dark. You desperately try to wipe the black paint away, smudging it, making your hands dirty, and ruining the canvas even more. But, if you simply take a gentle breath, and step back, 10 or 20 feet, you will see that the dark brushstroke is just a tiny, necessary shadow in a vast, vibrant, incredibly beautiful masterpiece. You do not need to erase the dark spots of your past, friends. You just need to take a step back and widen your perspective. When an old, hurtful memory arises, perhaps a moment when someone betrayed your trust, or a time when you felt deeply humiliated, notice how your mind zooms in, right onto the pain. You replay the words, you see the expressions, and you feel the sharp sting, all over again. In that moment, pause gently. Do not push the memory away, but instead, gently invite a broader perspective. Remind yourself that this event, no matter how painful, is just one single grain of sand on the endless, vast beach of your entire existence. You have laughed thousands of times, you have been kind, you have experienced deep joy, and you have survived every single hardship that has ever come your way. There is another wonderful, light-hearted story that beautifully illustrates this power of shifting perspective. There was once an old woman who lived in a small, quiet village. This old woman was known by everyone as the Weeping Woman because she seemed to cry every single day, regardless of what was happening around her. If the sun was shining brightly in a clear blue sky, she would sit by her window and weep bitterly. If the dark clouds rolled in and the heavy rain began to pour, she would still sit by her window, completely heartbroken, shedding endless tears. The villagers were confused and worried, but they did not know how to console her. One day, a wise, gentle traveling monk passed through the village and noticed the old woman crying softly on her porch. He stopped, smiled warmly, and asked her why she was carrying such a heavy river of tears. The old woman looked up, wiped her eyes, and explained her sorrow. She said she had 2 daughters. Her older daughter was married to a man who made and sold umbrellas. Her younger daughter was married to a man who made and sold soft, delicate cloth shoes. When the sun was shining brightly, she thought of her older daughter, and cried, because no one would buy umbrellas on a sunny day. And when it rained heavily, she thought of her younger daughter, and wept, because no one would buy cloth shoes in the wet mud. The wise monk listened patiently, his eyes full of kind understanding. He laughed softly, a gentle, comforting sound, and told the old woman that she actually had a wonderful, blessed life. He suggested that she simply turn her thoughts around just a little bit. He told her, when the sun is shining brightly, do not think of the umbrellas. Instead, smile brightly, and think of your younger daughter, who will sell many, many beautiful shoes in the dry, sunny weather. And when the heavy rain falls, do not think of the ruined shoes. Instead, rejoice, and think of your older daughter, who will sell out of her entire shop of umbrellas. The old woman paused, her eyes widening, as the simple, profound truth of his words washed over her mind. The external reality, the weather, the daughters, the businesses, none of that changed at all. But her relationship to that reality transformed completely. From that day forward, whether it rained or shined, the old woman was seen smiling, radiating joy, completely free from her previous sorrow. This, my dear friends, is the miraculous, healing power of changing how we relate to the thoughts we hold. When you are desperately trying to forget someone who hurt you, you are like the old woman, crying because of the rain. You are focusing entirely on the pain, the betrayal, and the loss. You are staring at the mud. But what if, gently, you shifted your gaze? What if, instead of dwelling on the pain of the ending, you acknowledged the profound strength you gained from surviving it? What if you recognized that this difficult experience taught you invaluable lessons about your own boundaries, about true compassion, and about the deep, unwavering resilience of your own spirit? You do not have to bless the person who hurt you right away. That takes time and immense grace. But you can, absolutely, bless the wisdom that the pain left behind. When the memory of that person arises, instead of fighting it, you can quietly say to yourself, yes, that happened, it was deeply painful, but it is over now, and I am stronger, wiser, and more grounded, because of it. Suddenly, the memory is no longer a heavy, dark weapon, used to punish yourself. It becomes a quiet, steady milestone, marking your own incredible growth. It loses its sting, and slowly, gently, it begins to fade into the background, no longer demanding your constant, exhausting attention. Another profound reason why some memories stick to us, like stubborn shadows, is because we are holding on to a deep, unacknowledged sense of guilt. We often try to forget our own mistakes, the times we spoke in anger, the moments we were selfish, or the instances where we failed to be the kind of person we truly wish to be. We push these memories down, locking them in a dark room in our minds, because looking at them brings up a wave of intense shame. But shame, friends, is a very sticky, heavy emotion. It demands to be felt. If you lock a memory in the dark, it does not disappear. It sits there, multiplying, whispering harsh judgments to you, when you are tired, or vulnerable. To truly release these painful memories, you must be willing to gently open the door to that dark room, and let the light of your own compassion shine in. You must look at your past self, not with harsh, unforgiving judgment, but with the same tender understanding you would offer to a dear, struggling friend. Realize, deeply, that the version of you, who made that mistake, in the past, did so out of confusion, fear, or a lack of understanding. They did the best they could, with the limited wisdom they had at that very moment. The fact that you feel regret now, the fact that you wish you had acted differently, is beautiful proof that you have grown. You are no longer the same person who made that error. The river has moved on, the water has flowed downstream. Holding on to guilt is like trying to pay a debt that has already been cancelled. The universe does not want you to suffer endlessly for a past mistake. The profound teachings of the Buddha emphasize that the present moment is the only place where true redemption and true freedom can ever be found. Every single breath you take is a completely fresh start, a blank canvas, a brand new opportunity to choose kindness over anger and peace over turmoil. When a regretful memory surfaces, greet it gently. Say to it, I see you, I acknowledge the mistake, I have learned the lesson, and now, I am choosing to release you. Imagine taking a heavy, dark stone out of a backpack you have been carrying for years, and gently setting it down by the side of a peaceful road. You do not hate the stone, you simply do not need to carry it anymore. Walk away from it, with a light heart, knowing that the past is a place of reference, a place of learning, not a permanent place of residence. The present moment is calling you, with its fresh breeze, its warm sunlight, and its infinite, quiet possibilities. Do not miss the beauty of right now, because you are staring backward, at a closed door. The key to freedom is simply realizing that the door is already unlocked, and you just need to turn around and look at the open path, waiting patiently, right in front of you. It is a beautiful, open road, filled with the gentle light of the present moment. We often stumble, friends, simply because we are convinced that we must be the absolute rulers of our own inner world. We believe, quite mistakenly, that if we are truly strong, if we are truly capable, we should be able to command our thoughts, like a strict general commanding an army. We tell our brains to turn left, to turn right, to remember this, and to absolutely, completely, forget that. But, if you observe closely, if you sit quietly for just a few minutes, you will quickly discover that the mind does not follow orders. If we were truly the absolute masters of our minds, as the Buddha so brilliantly pointed out, we could simply say, "Let my mind be filled with only joy, let it never experience sadness, and let it never recall anything painful." But we all know, deeply, and sometimes painfully, that this is not how it works. Thoughts arise, and thoughts fade away, based entirely on their own causes and their own conditions. A certain smell, floating on the breeze, a sudden, familiar song, playing softly in the distance, or even the subtle change in the weather, can instantly trigger a memory, pulling it up from the deep, quiet waters of your subconscious. This brings us, everyone, to a very comforting and deeply liberating truth, found at the very heart of the Dharma. The thoughts that appear in your head, the memories that flash before your eyes, are not actually you. They are not a permanent, solid part of your true identity. They are simply passing phenomena, like sudden gusts of wind, blowing through an open window. When a cold, biting wind blows into the room, you do not look at the wind, and say, "I am this cold wind is my identity." You simply say, "There is a cold draft," and perhaps, you fetch a warm blanket. You must learn, friends, to treat your painful memories, in the exact same, gentle way. When a memory of an old heartbreak, or a past failure, blows into your awareness, it is just a draft of old, conditioned energy. You do not need to claim it, you do not need to own it, and you certainly do not need to fight it. Fighting the wind is an exhausting and entirely pointless endeavor. Instead, you just wrap the warm blanket of your own mindful awareness around your shoulders, and you wait, patiently, for the draft to pass. There is a wonderful, profound story, from the ancient texts, about a monk named Sona, which perfectly captures this delicate balance. Sona, before choosing the quiet path of a monk, was a very wealthy, highly celebrated musician. He was famous, across the entire kingdom, for playing a beautiful, stringed instrument, very much like a lute. He lived a life of absolute luxury, with skin so delicate, and so soft, that he had never known a single day of hard, physical labor. However, a deep yearning for truth, led him to leave his comfortable palace, and join the Buddha, in the quiet, demanding forest. Because Sona was so eager, and so desperate, to reach complete peace, and to forget his past attachments, he pushed himself, incredibly hard. He practiced walking meditation, back and forth, on a rough, stony path, for hours, and hours, on end. He refused to rest, he refused to sleep, and he forcefully commanded his mind, to let go of all worldly desires. He tried so hard, that his soft, delicate feet, began to bleed, staining the dusty path, with bright red marks. Despite this intense, grueling effort, his mind remained chaotic, restless, and completely filled, with the very thoughts, he was trying so desperately, to crush. Exhausted, in deep physical pain, and feeling completely heartbroken, Sona decided, that he was a total failure. He thought to himself, that this path of peace, was simply too hard, and he should just go back, to his rich, luxurious life, in the palace. The Buddha, perceiving Sona's deep despair, and his quiet thoughts of giving up, went to visit him. The Buddha sat down, radiating a gentle, calming presence, and began to speak to Sona, using a language, that the former musician, would intimately, and perfectly understand. The Buddha asked Sona, when you were a famous musician, playing your beautiful lute, what happened, when the strings of your instrument were wound too tightly? Sona replied, quickly, that if the strings were too tight, the music would be harsh, shrill, and the strings themselves would easily snap and break. The Buddha nodded gently, and then asked, what happened, when the strings were left far too loose? Sona answered, that if the strings were too loose, they would not produce any clear sound at all, the music would be flat and entirely lifeless. Finally, the Buddha asked, how then, does the lute produce the most beautiful, heavenly music? Sona smiled, a small spark of understanding, lighting up his tired eyes. He said, the strings must be tuned perfectly, neither too tight, nor too loose, but balanced, with just the right amount of tension. The Buddha smiled back, a smile of infinite, warm compassion. He told Sona, that the human mind, and the practice of letting go, is exactly like that delicate, beautiful lute. When you force your mind, when you grit your teeth, and aggressively demand that a memory disappear, you are winding the strings of your mind far too tightly. The tension builds, the anxiety grows, and eventually, your patience snaps, leading to more frustration and deeper suffering. This is why, the harder you try to forget, the louder the memory screams. You are playing a harsh, discordant note on an instrument wound to the breaking point. On the other hand, if you let your mind be completely loose, if you allow yourself to drown in the memories, endlessly wallowing in the past, without any awareness, you produce no harmony, and you simply sink into deep sadness. The middle way, friends, the path of true, lasting peace, is finding that perfect, gentle tension. You put forth a soft effort, to stay present, and to recognize the memory, when it arrives. But you do not squeeze it, you do not attack it, and you do not run away from it. You simply observe it, with a steady, quiet, and balanced mind. You let the memory play its note, you acknowledge its sound, and then, you gently guide your attention, back to the simple, beautiful rhythm of your own breathing. When we talk about breathing, everyone, we are talking about a very powerful, yet incredibly simple anchor, that keeps us grounded, in the present reality. Memories, by their very definition, belong entirely to the past. They are ghosts, echoes of things, that no longer exist, in this exact, current moment. When you are caught in a painful memory, your mind has traveled backward in time, but your body, your physical form, is still sitting right here, in the present. This creates a terrible, uncomfortable split, a painful separation, between where your mind is, and where your body is. You might notice this, in how your body reacts, when a bad memory surfaces. Your shoulders tense up, tight as a knot, your jaw clenches hard, and your breathing becomes very shallow, and very rapid. Your physical body is essentially preparing for a real, immediate danger, because your mind is deeply convinced that the past event is happening all over again, right now. The secret to breaking this cycle is not to argue with the memory, but to simply bring the mind back to the body, gently and quietly. You can do this simply by noticing the physical sensation of taking a single breath. When the memory of a harsh word, or a sad ending, tries to pull you away, you just say to yourself, "Ah, a memory is here, but right now, I am simply breathing in." You feel the cool air, entering your nose, filling your lungs, and expanding your chest. And then, you gently breathe out, feeling the warm air leave, and feeling the tension in your shoulders slowly melt away. You do not have to be an expert, you do not have to sit in a perfect, rigid posture. You just need to feel the undeniable, simple truth of being alive in this exact, passing second. There is another wonderful, illuminating story about a dedicated monk who lived entirely alone in a deep, dark cave located high up on a rugged mountain. This monk was very earnest, and he practiced his meditation day and night with great devotion. However, he had a very active, highly imaginative mind. One night, while meditating in the deep silence of the cave, illuminated only by a small, flickering oil lamp, a terrifying, massive shadow suddenly appeared on the rough stone wall right in front of him. The shadow looked like a horrible, vicious demon with sharp claws and a menacing shape. The monk was immediately gripped by an intense, freezing fear. His heart pounded wildly in his chest, and his mind raced with terrible thoughts. He tried to ignore the shadow, he closed his eyes tightly, and he chanted his verses as loudly as he could, hoping the demon would go away. But every time he opened his eyes, just a tiny bit, the terrifying shadow was still there, looming large and threatening on the cave wall. He spent the entire night, trembling, fighting, and sweating, in absolute terror. He was exhausted, drained, and completely defeated by this dark, silent enemy. The next morning, when the bright, golden sun rose, and filled the cave with warm, natural light, the monk gathered his courage, and looked closely at the spot where the demon had been. To his absolute astonishment, and deep embarrassment, he saw what had actually caused the shadow. It was not a demon at all. It was simply a small, innocent piece of twisted, dry wood, hanging from the ceiling, which had cast a large, distorted shadow in the flickering light of his little lamp. The monk laughed out loud, the sound echoing freely in the empty cave. He realized, with profound clarity, that he had spent an entire, miserable night, fighting a mere projection, an empty illusion, created entirely by a small object and a trick of the light. His fear was completely real, his racing heart was real, and his exhaustion was real, but the monster itself was never actually there. It was just a shadow, utterly empty, and entirely harmless. Our painful memories, friends, are exactly like that scary, looming shadow on the wall of the cave. When the light of our awareness shines upon an old, twisted event from the past, it casts a massive, dark shadow across our current peace of mind. We look at that shadow, and we believe it is a real, present danger. We feel the old anger, the sharp sadness, and the bitter regret, as if the event is happening right now. We fight the shadow, we run from it, and we desperately try to make it disappear. But the truth is, the memory cannot hurt you. It is merely an echo, a harmless projection, on the screen of your beautiful mind. The person who hurt you is not in the room with you right now. The failure you experienced is not happening in this exact moment. The embarrassing mistake is completely gone, swept away by the endless river of time. The only thing that exists, right here and right now, is the shadow. And the shadow, everyone, has absolutely zero power over your present reality, unless you decide to give it that power. When you stop running from the shadow, and you find the quiet courage to simply look at it directly and calmly, you begin to see its empty nature. You realize that the past is untouchable, unchangeable, and most importantly, it is completely finished. You cannot go back and rewrite the script. You cannot unsay the words, and you cannot undo the actions. But, you have total, absolute freedom, in how you choose to look at the shadow, right now. You can choose to say, I see you, memory, you are a shadow of something that happened, but you are not happening now. You are safe, friends. In this very moment, sitting here, listening to these words, breathing the air, you are entirely, completely safe. The mind will try to convince you otherwise, it will try to pull you into the dark cave of the past, but you must remember, to turn on the bright, warm sunlight, of your present awareness. When the sun shines, the scary shadows of the flickering lamp, naturally vanish, completely on their own. Sometimes, the memories we struggle with the most, are not the ones of people who hurt us, but rather, the memories of deep, profound loss. We remember someone we loved, who is no longer here, a relationship that ended, or a time in our lives, when everything felt simple, and perfect. These memories, bring a different kind of pain, a soft, lingering ache, a deep yearning, for what used to be. We try to forget the pain of the loss, but in doing so, we feel like we are betraying the love, that we once shared. This is a very delicate, tender place in the human heart, everyone. It requires immense, gentle compassion. You do not have to forget the love, to heal the pain. The Buddhist perspective on loss, is rooted deeply, in the understanding of the natural, unavoidable cycle of coming together, and moving apart. Everything that is put together, every relationship, every life, every beautiful flower, must eventually, face separation. It is not a punishment, it is not a cruel trick of the universe, it is simply the natural, flowing rhythm, of all existence. There is a beautiful, deeply touching story, about a very wealthy merchant, who lost his young, beloved son, to a sudden illness. The merchant was completely shattered, broken beyond words, and he wept day and night, unable to eat, unable to sleep, and completely unable, to run his business. He built a magnificent, golden shrine, in the center of his garden, and he placed a small, beautiful statue of his son, inside it. Every single day, he would go to the shrine, light sweet-smelling incense, and talk to the statue, as if his son, were still alive. He lived completely in the past, holding on to the memory of his son, so tightly, that he completely ignored his living wife, his friends, and the entire world, around him. One day, a wise traveler, dressed in simple robes, came to the merchant's large house, asking for a small bowl of rice. The merchant, usually very generous, was so absorbed in his deep sorrow, that he angrily waved the traveler away, shouting that he had no time for beggars, because his heart was completely broken. The traveler, undisturbed by the anger, looked at the golden shrine, and then looked at the merchant, with eyes full of deep, quiet understanding. He said, gently, I see you have built a beautiful cage, for a bird that has already flown far away, into the vast, open sky. You are burning expensive incense, for a memory, while the real, beautiful life, happening right in front of you, is slowly turning to cold ashes. The merchant, shocked by these direct, piercing words, stopped weeping, and stared at the traveler. The wise traveler continued, speaking softly, the love you feel for your son, is completely real, and deeply beautiful. But true love, does not trap the beloved, in a dark cage of sorrow. True love, wishes freedom, and peace, for the one who has departed. By clinging so fiercely to the physical memory and the pain of his absence, you are not honoring his life, you are only destroying your own. Let the tears flow when they need to flow, but do not build your entire house upon a foundation of endless grief. The merchant, suddenly realizing the profound truth in these words, fell to his knees, and wept a different kind of tear. He wept tears of release, tears of letting go. He realized that he could keep the pure, bright love for his son warmly in his heart, without having to suffer endlessly over his physical absence. He could honor his son's memory by living a good, generous, and deeply meaningful life, rather than withering away in a dark corner of his garden. When we lose something or someone dear to us, friends, the memory of them will naturally bring a wave of sadness. You do not need to fight that wave. You do not need to aggressively forget them. The goal is not to erase the people who have touched our souls. The goal is to transform the heavy, pulling pain of attachment into a light, uplifting feeling of gratitude. Instead of thinking, "I am so sad because they are gone," gently try to shift the thought to say, "I am so incredibly grateful that they were here, even if just for a little while." A flower blooming in the morning, and withering in the evening, is not a tragedy, it is a complete, beautiful cycle. We do not look at a sunset, and cry because the sun is disappearing. We stand there, in quiet awe, admiring the breathtaking colors, grateful for the light it gave us, all day long. We know the sun will return, in a different way, on a different day. We must learn to view our fleeting experiences, and the people who pass through our lives, with that same, peaceful appreciation. The memories we hold, are like old photographs, stored in a dusty, heavy album. Sometimes, we open the album, and we smile, looking at the bright, happy moments. Sometimes, we turn the page, and we see a picture that brings a sharp pang of regret, or a deep wave of sorrow. The problem arises, everyone, when we take that one painful photograph, take it out of the book, and paste it directly onto our own faces. We walk around, interacting with the world, filtering every single experience, through the lens of that one, old, painful picture. We assume that because someone betrayed us in the past, everyone we meet today, is secretly planning to do the exact same thing. We assume that because we failed at one project, years ago, we are completely incapable of ever succeeding again. We let the memory dictate the present reality. But the photograph is just a piece of paper. It does not define the vast, ever-changing landscape of who you are becoming right now. You must learn to gently place the photograph back into the album. You acknowledge it is there, you know where it is kept, but you do not need to stare at it every single minute of the day. You close the heavy book, place it softly on the shelf, and you step outside, into the fresh air, ready to experience life, directly, and cleanly, without the thick, heavy filter of past hurts. This takes practice, friends. It takes a gentle, patient dedication, to repeatedly catch the mind, when it reaches for the old album, and to softly guide it back, to the present moment. Do not be angry with yourself, when you fail. Do not scold yourself, when a memory suddenly grabs you, and pulls you under for a moment. The mind has been running along these familiar, well-worn tracks, for many, many years. It takes time, to build a new path, a path of gentle observation, and quiet release. Every time you catch yourself ruminating, every time you take a deep breath, and softly detach from a painful thought, you are laying down a new stone, on a completely new path. Think of the mind, as a vast, beautifully clear lake. When the wind is calm, the surface of the lake is perfectly smooth, acting like a giant, flawless mirror, reflecting the blue sky, and the white clouds, with absolute, perfect clarity. But when a strong storm rolls in, the wind whips the water, creating choppy waves, and turning the surface, chaotic, and dark. The lake can no longer reflect the sky. The lake, during the storm, might feel like it is ruined, completely broken, and endlessly chaotic. But the true nature of the lake, deep down, far below the turbulent surface, is always calm, steady, and perfectly still. The storm, no matter how violent, only affects the very top layer of the water. The storm will eventually pass, the wind will eventually die down, and the lake will naturally, effortlessly, return to its clear, mirror-like state. You do not need to iron the waves flat. You do not need to cover the lake, to protect it from the wind. You simply wait, with deep, trusting patience, knowing that clarity is the natural state, waiting to return. Your beautiful, capable mind is exactly like that vast, deep lake. The memories, the regrets, the anxieties about the past, they are just the temporary, passing winds, creating waves on the surface of your consciousness. When a memory hits hard, and your mind feels completely chaotic, remember the deep, untouchable stillness that lives quietly within you. You are not the storm, friends. You are the deep, quiet water, observing the storm. The more you practice this gentle detachment, the less power the painful memories will have. They will still arise, because you are human, and the mind is designed to remember. But they will no longer carry that heavy, sharp sting. They will become like faded echoes, distant sounds that you notice, but that no longer demand your full, emotional reaction. You will hear the echo, and you will simply smile, a soft, understanding smile, knowing that it is just a ghost of the past, completely unable to touch the profound, unshakable peace of your present moment. And so, as we sit here together, quietly exploring these invisible landscapes of the heart, remember to be kind to yourself. The journey of letting go is not a race, it is not a fierce competition, and it is certainly not a battle to be won by brute force. It is a slow, gentle blossoming, like a tightly closed bud, slowly opening its petals to the warmth of the morning sun. The sun does not pry the petals apart, it simply shines, providing the necessary warmth, and the flower opens, completely naturally, in its own perfect time. Provide your mind with that same, steady warmth of compassion. Do not pry your memories out by force. Just shine the gentle light of your awareness upon them, and watch, with a quiet, peaceful heart, as the tight grip of the past, slowly, naturally, begins to loosen, and fall away. The path to true freedom from our heavy thoughts, does not lie in fierce destruction, or aggressive forgetting, but rather, in the profound, quiet power, of simply allowing things to be, exactly as they are, without letting them define who you are, or dictate the direction of your beautiful, unfolding journey. The true magic happens, when you finally realize, that the past only has a voice, because you are providing the microphone. When you gently put the microphone down, the past becomes nothing more, than a silent whisper in the wind, a wind that you can feel, but that can never, ever, blow you off your steady, peaceful path, because the shadow cannot hurt you, when you are standing firmly, in the warm, comforting light, of the present moment. This gentle light, my friends, is always available to you, completely free of charge, and it requires no special effort to find. It is simply the act of bringing your full, undivided attention to exactly what is happening right now, in your immediate surroundings. But often, we refuse to stand in the light. We prefer to hide in the familiar, heavy shadows of our resentments, because letting go of a painful memory often feels like we are giving up a piece of our own justice. Consider for a moment why we hold on so fiercely to the memories of those who have betrayed us. When someone wrongs you, a very strong, protective part of your ego steps forward. It acts like a strict lawyer, gathering evidence, building a massive case against the person who hurt you. You replay the argument, you remember the exact, cruel words they used, and you feel the sharp sting of the betrayal, all over again. You try to forget the pain, but your mind insists on keeping the memory alive, because it believes that remembering the wrong is the only way to protect yourself from future harm. It feels like, if you drop the memory, you are somehow saying that what the other person did was acceptable or right. There is a profound, deeply illustrative story about a young, successful merchant who lived in a bustling, prosperous city. This merchant had built a massive fortune entirely alongside his closest, most trusted friend and business partner. They had shared everything, from their meals to their deepest secrets. However, one dark day, the trusted partner, consumed by a sudden, intense greed, secretly took all their combined wealth and vanished into the night, leaving the young merchant completely ruined, deeply in debt, and utterly heartbroken. The betrayal was so sharp, so devastating, that the merchant felt as though a knife had been twisted in his back. Desperate to rebuild his life, and desperate to escape the crushing pain, the merchant moved to a brand new town, far away from his old life. He made a strict, unbreakable rule for himself, and for his new household. He forbade anyone, under any circumstances, to ever speak the name of his former partner, or to mention the city where they used to live. He believed, with all his heart, that if he simply built a thick, solid wall of silence around the past, if he completely erased the man's name from the air, he would finally be able to forget, and find true peace. But, as you might gently suspect, friends, this aggressive attempt to erase the past created the exact opposite effect. Every single day, the merchant lived in constant, exhausting fear that someone might accidentally break his rule. If he saw a stranger on the street, who vaguely resembled his old partner, his heart would hammer wildly in his chest, his hands would shake, and a dark, heavy cloud of bitter anger would completely ruin his entire day. He was a prisoner, completely trapped in an invisible, suffocating cage, built entirely out of his own, burning resentment. He was carrying his enemy, right inside his own mind, every single minute of the day. One quiet afternoon, a wandering monk, known throughout the region for his deep, gentle wisdom, arrived in the town. The merchant, feeling completely exhausted by his own hidden anger, invited the monk into his home, poured him a warm cup of water, and shared his bitter, painful story. He looked at the monk with tired, desperate eyes, and asked, "How can I completely, permanently forget this terrible man, and the horrible, unforgivable things he did to me, so I can finally sleep at night?" The wise monk listened quietly, sitting perfectly still, his eyes radiating a soft, steady kindness. He did not immediately answer the question. Instead, he gently asked the merchant to go out into the garden, and find the largest, heaviest rock he could carry, preferably one covered in wet, thick mud. The merchant, though deeply confused by this strange request, went out, and brought back a massive, dirty rock, straining under its heavy weight. The monk smiled, and instructed the merchant to hold the heavy, muddy rock tightly against his own chest for the remainder of the day, as he went about his normal household chores. The young merchant struggled terribly. His arms ached with a burning pain, his beautiful, expensive clothes were completely ruined by the thick, wet mud, and he could not use his hands to comfortably eat his dinner, or to embrace his new family. At the end of the long, miserable day, exhausted, angry, and deeply frustrated, the merchant returned to the monk. He dropped the heavy rock onto the floor, with a loud thud, and demanded to know why the monk had made him carry such a useless, painful burden, all day long, ruining his clothes, and draining all his energy. The gentle monk smiled, a soft, understanding smile, that seemed to light up the quiet room. He pointed to the dirty rock on the floor, and said softly, "That heavy rock, my friend, is exactly like the bitter memory of your old partner. You are choosing, every single day, to hold that heavy, muddy resentment tightly against your own heart. You are letting the sharp edges cut into you, you are letting the mud stain your beautiful, present life, and yet, you are constantly wondering why you feel so heavy, so exhausted, and so utterly drained of joy. You see, everyone, trying to forcefully forget someone who hurt you, without resolving the anger, is like trying to pretend that you are not carrying a massive rock, while your arms are actively breaking under its terrible weight. You cannot simply command your brain to suddenly delete the event, like erasing words from a chalkboard. The only true way, the only lasting way, to find relief, is to consciously, deliberately, open your tight hands, and choose to drop the rock. Dropping the rock does not mean that the rock was not incredibly heavy. It does not mean that the person who handed you the rock was kind or justified in their actions. It simply means that you love yourself enough to finally stop carrying the terrible, crushing weight. This beautiful realization leads us directly to a very profound, deeply healing concept, found at the very core of Buddhist philosophy. It is the clear understanding of karma, which simply means action, and its inevitable result. When someone acts with deep cruelty, when they betray a loyal friend, or when they speak harsh, cutting words designed to cause pain, they are not acting from a place of strength, or true happiness. A genuinely peaceful, joyful human being does not go out into the world with the intention of destroying others. The person who hurt you is deeply trapped in their own dark storm, acting blindly out of their own ignorance, deep-seated fear, and profound internal suffering. When you allow this deep understanding to settle into your heart, a massive, beautiful shift begins to occur inside your mind. The burning, sharp anger slowly begins to cool and transform into a quiet, gentle pity. You stop seeing the person who wronged you as a powerful, evil monster who successfully destroyed your happiness, and you begin to see them as a deeply confused, lost traveler, walking blindly and painfully toward their own inevitable suffering. You do not have to become their friend again, you do not have to invite them back into your sacred space, but you can, absolutely, release the burning, exhausting desire for personal revenge. The primary reason we remember the wrongs done to us so vividly, and replay them like a broken record, is because a deeply wounded part of our ego is desperately waiting for a sincere apology that may never, ever arrive. We hold on to the painful memory, tightly in our hands, treating it like a piece of crucial, undeniable evidence, in a grand, imaginary courtroom. We silently think to ourselves, if I forget this pain, if I let this go, then they get away with it, the universe is unfair, and justice is completely, permanently lost. We essentially use our own painful memory, to continuously punish ourselves, secretly hoping that somehow, magically, the other person will feel the sharp sting of our suffering. But friends, the vast, beautiful universe, operates on a very precise, perfectly balanced law of natural consequences. Every single action, every spoken word, and even every hidden thought, carries its own natural, inescapable result, just as a shadow naturally follows a person walking in the sun. You do not need to be the judge, the jury, or the angry executioner. You do not need to exhaust yourself, holding on to heavy files of bitter evidence, in your beautiful, capable mind. The universe, in its infinite wisdom, keeps its own perfect, silent records. When you truly, deeply understand this, a massive, crushing weight, is instantly lifted from your tired shoulders. You can finally drop the heavy burden, and breathe deeply, expanding your chest with fresh, peaceful air. You can gently say to the stubborn memory, yes, this deeply unfair thing happened to me, it caused me profound pain, but it is no longer my job, to carry the heavy burden of judgment. I am handing this painful case, entirely over to the natural laws of life, and I am choosing, right here, and right now, to walk away, with completely empty, peaceful hands. The exact moment you stop demanding justice from your own past, the past completely loses its powerful, magnetic grip on your present reality. The memories will still exist, they will occasionally float through your mind like passing clouds, but they will be completely empty, drained of their painful, stinging venom. Another profound reason why we try so hard to forcefully forget certain things, is because we are deeply terrified of the raw vulnerability that the specific memory brings back to the surface. When we remember a time we failed miserably, or a time we were painfully rejected by someone we loved, we feel a sudden, sharp drop in our stomach. We feel exposed, weak, foolish, and deeply embarrassed. To protect ourselves, we instinctively build thick, solid walls around these tender memories, trying to lock them away in a dark vault, hoping we never have to feel that specific, uncomfortable weakness ever again. But true vulnerability, my dear friends, is not a weakness at all. It is, in fact, the very core, the absolute foundation, of your genuine human strength. There is a wonderful, timeless story, from the ancient lands, about a very proud, powerful warrior, who was known across many kingdoms, for his unmatched, brutal skill with a heavy sword. Because he had many enemies, he wore thick, heavy armor, made of solid, unyielding iron, absolutely everywhere he went. He wore the armor while riding his horse, he wore it while eating his meals, and he even wore the heavy plates, while trying to sleep at night. He was so deeply terrified of being wounded, so terrified of showing even a single ounce of physical weakness, that he had trapped himself, completely and entirely, inside a dark, suffocating shell of cold metal. One bright, sunny morning, a small, gentle monk, dressed in worn, simple robes, walked past the heavily armored warrior, and laughed out loud, a soft, chiming sound, clear and bright, like a tiny silver bell. The proud warrior was instantly furious, his ego deeply offended. He drew his massive, sharp sword, pointed it directly at the little monk's chest, and demanded to know, in a booming voice, why the monk dared to laugh at him. The monk smiled gently, entirely unafraid of the sharp blade, and said softly, "I am laughing, brave warrior, because you are a miserable prisoner of your own deep fear." The monk continued, his voice calm and steady, "You carry a heavy, iron prison, on your own tired back, every single day, and you proudly call it protection. You are so incredibly afraid of receiving a single, small cut, that you have entirely forgotten what it feels like to let the warm, golden sun touch your bare skin, or to feel the soft, cooling breeze blow across your face on a quiet summer evening. You are protected from the swords of your enemies, yes, but you are also completely blocked from experiencing the beautiful, tender joys of simply being alive." The warrior, completely stunned by the absolute, piercing truth of these gentle words, slowly lowered his heavy sword. He realized, in a sudden flash of clarity, that in his desperate, exhausting attempt to avoid any possible pain, he had also successfully blocked out all the joy, the softness, the warmth, and the profound beauty of his own existence. Slowly, deliberately, piece by heavy piece, he unbuckled the thick iron plates, and let them fall, crashing onto the dusty ground. He stood there, vulnerable, exposed to the open air, but for the very first time in his entire life, he felt completely and truly free. When you try to forcefully suppress and aggressively forget your painful memories, you are, without realizing it, building that exact same, heavy iron armor, right around your own soft heart. You are silently telling the universe, "I will never let myself feel that sharp pain again, so I will just numb everything, I will shut down all my feelings." But the human heart, everyone, does not work like a selective, easily controlled door. You cannot choose to shut the heavy door, only to the sadness, the grief, and the deep regret. When you close the iron door to your heart, in a desperate attempt to keep out the pain, you are also, simultaneously, keeping out the deep joy, the pure, radiant love, and the profound, healing peace that you so desperately crave. To truly live a rich, meaningful, and deeply beautiful life, you must be willing to stand openly in the vast field of your own experiences, completely without your heavy armor. You must be willing, with gentle courage, to let the memories arise naturally, to feel the soft, lingering ache of a past failure, or the tender, quiet sorrow of an old loss, without immediately running away, to hide in the safe, numb darkness. It is perfectly okay to feel a little sad sometimes, friends. It is profoundly human to remember a foolish mistake, and feel a brief, warm blush of embarrassment on your cheeks. These fleeting, temporary emotions will absolutely not destroy you. They are simply beautiful, undeniable proof that you possess a soft, beating, and fully alive heart. Let us take a moment to look very closely at the actual nature of thoughts themselves, friends. Have you ever noticed how quickly a terrifying thought completely changes its shape when you simply find the courage to stop running and stare directly at it? Try this simple, powerful experiment the next time a stubborn, unwanted memory suddenly visits your mind. Instead of reacting with your usual panic, instead of tightening your chest and commanding the thought to leave, just stop absolutely everything you are doing, take a slow breath, and look directly at the memory. Ask yourself, gently and curiously, where exactly is this memory located? Is it hiding behind my eyes? Is it floating somewhere in my chest? Does it have a solid shape? Does it have a specific, definable color? When you turn the bright, clear, unwavering spotlight of your full attention directly onto a painful thought, a very strange and truly wonderful thing begins to happen. The scary thought begins to dissolve. It loses its solid, heavy, intimidating shape, and it slowly turns into thin, empty air. You realize, through direct, personal observation, that the memory is not a physical object, it is not a dangerous, living predator, hunting you down in the dark. It is nothing more than a tiny, fleeting electrical spark, a temporary, passing vibration, moving harmlessly, through the vast, open space of your deep awareness. It only feels solid, and utterly terrifying, because you are constantly, exhaustingly, running away from it. When you finally turn around, and face the thought with calm curiosity, it simply falls apart, losing all its power. This beautiful practice of direct, gentle observation, is very much like turning on the bright light, in a dark, scary room. When you were a very small child, you might have been deeply terrified of the dark, strange shapes in your bedroom at night, utterly convinced they were hungry monsters, hiding under the bed, or lurking quietly in the closet. You would pull the thick blankets over your head, trembling with real fear, desperately trying to forget the scary shapes, wishing for morning to come. But the only thing, the absolute only thing, that ever truly chased those terrifying monsters away, was when your mother or father walked calmly into the room, smiled gently at you, and flipped the light switch. In a single instant, the terrifying, sharp-clawed monster instantly turned back into a messy pile of dirty clothes, or an old, friendly teddy bear, sitting harmlessly on a chair. Your own mindful awareness, friends, is exactly that powerful, illuminating light switch. Do not hide under the heavy blankets of endless distraction, everyone. Do not try to bury your head in the sand of busyness, secretly hoping the painful memories will just magically disappear, while you are not looking. Bring those memories out, directly into the soft light of your own compassion. Look at them kindly, without judging yourself. Say gently to the memory, "Oh, I see you now, you are just an old pile of clothes, you are just an old, worn-out story, that I have been endlessly repeating to myself, for far too long. I see you clearly now, in the light, and I know, deeply in my heart, that you have no real power over me, whatsoever." Another incredibly important aspect of this quiet, internal journey, is paying close attention to the specific environment we continuously create, right inside our own minds. I want you to imagine that your mind is a vast, beautiful garden, filled with rich, dark, incredibly fertile soil. Every single thought you have, whether good or bad, is a tiny, potent seed that you are actively planting deep into this beautiful garden. If you constantly choose to dwell on intense anger, if you obsessively replay old betrayals, and if you continuously, violently fight with your own past, you are planting thousands and thousands of seeds of bitter, thorny weeds. Because the soil of your mind is so fertile, these weeds will grow very quickly, choking the life out of everything else, and your mental garden will quickly become a dark, painful, and deeply tangled place to live. However, you possess the absolute, undeniable power to consciously choose different seeds. Even when an old, painful weed naturally sprouts, even when a difficult memory forcefully pushes its way through the soil of your awareness, you do not have to water it. You do not have to give that weed your precious, limited attention, your valuable time, or your intense emotional energy. You can simply notice the weed, acknowledge its presence, and then deliberately, gently, choose to plant a beautiful, brightly colored, fragrant flower, right next to it. You can consciously plant seeds of deep gratitude for the very simple, everyday things, like a warm cup of clear water, the breathtaking beauty of a morning sunrise, or the steady, reliable, rhythmic beating of your own strong, miraculous heart. As you continue, patiently and consistently, to water the beautiful flowers, focusing your mental energy on the good, the peaceful, and the kind aspects of your life, the flowers will naturally grow tall, strong, and deeply rooted in the soil. They will eventually, completely overshadow the bitter weeds, blocking out their light, until the neglected weeds naturally wither, dry up, and fade away, completely on their own. You do not have to exhaust yourself, violently ripping the weeds out with your bare hands, tearing up the delicate garden, and causing a massive, painful mess in your mind. You just have to quietly starve the weeds of your attention, while actively, lovingly cultivating the profound, healing beauty of the present moment. This slow, steady, and gentle cultivation is exactly what builds true, unshakable inner resilience. When you are truly resilient, you do not angrily demand that your mind be perfectly empty, or that your personal history be completely flawless and free of mistakes. You simply know, with a deep, quiet, unwavering confidence, that no matter what difficult memory unexpectedly visits your mental guest house, you have the immense capacity to host it gracefully, without ever losing your own inner balance. You gradually become like a vast, deep, majestic ocean, completely capable of holding immense, crashing waves on the busy surface, while remaining perfectly still, silent, and undisturbed, at the very bottom, knowing that surface storms cannot touch your deep peace. Sometimes, friends, we try so desperately to forget our own inherent goodness, simply because a few unaware people in our past completely failed to recognize it. If someone treated you very poorly, if someone repeatedly made you feel small, worthless, or completely unlovable, you might unconsciously start to carry their harsh, incorrect judgment, as if it were an absolute, undeniable truth about who you are. You quietly replay their cruel, thoughtless words, over and over again in your mind, trying to figure out what is fundamentally wrong with you. You try to forcefully forget the painful interaction, but the deep, bleeding wound to your own self-worth remains wide open and incredibly painful. You must realize, deeply and completely, that the specific way another person treats you is always a direct reflection of their own internal landscape, their own hidden pain, and their own limited understanding, not a true measure of your actual value. If you offer a priceless, flawlessly cut, beautiful diamond to a person who only knows the value of common, cheap stones found in the dirt, they will confidently tell you that your brilliant diamond is completely useless, and they might even carelessly throw it into the mud. Does their profound ignorance, in any way, change the actual, inherent, magnificent value of the diamond? No, it absolutely does not. The diamond remains brilliant, perfect, and deeply precious, entirely regardless of who is holding it, or what they think of it. You are that brilliant, flawless, deeply precious diamond, everyone. The cruel, thoughtless words from your past, the painful rejections, and the deep misunderstandings, are just the limited opinions of people who simply did not have the clarity, or the wisdom, to truly see your immense, inherent worth. You do not need to forcefully, aggressively forget their words, to be free of them, but you absolutely must, consciously stop believing them. When the heavy memory of their rejection surfaces, you can gently, quietly say to yourself, that was their limitation, their clouded vision, not my fundamental flaw. I am completely whole, I am deeply worthy of love, and I do not need anyone else's fleeting validation to know my own pure, beautiful, and luminous nature. By simply removing your deep belief from the painful memory, the memory instantly loses its heavy, sinking anchor. It transforms from a weapon into just a collection of random sounds, a floating, harmless image, completely detached from your true sense of self. This, my dear friends, is the ultimate, profound freedom that the teachings guide us toward. It is the freedom, not from having thoughts, because thoughts will always come, but the absolute freedom from being deeply, painfully entangled in the terrifying stories those thoughts try to tell you. You are absolutely not the sad story of your past. You are the beautiful, vast, silent presence that is quietly reading the story right now, and you possess the immense power, at any given moment, to simply, gracefully close the heavy book, and walk outside, to fully enjoy the warm, golden light of the sun, because the light is always there, waiting patiently, for you to step into it, and realize that you are completely, beautifully safe, right here, and right now. As long as you do not let the ghosts of yesterday convince you that you are still living in the dark, because the light of your awareness can completely obliterate the shadows. If you just allow yourself to look up and smile, knowing the past is gone, and the future is unwritten, leaving only this perfect, quiet breath, which is the only thing you will ever truly need to find your way back home to yourself, when the noise gets too loud, because peace is not the absence of memory, but the presence of understanding, an understanding that softly whispers, you have survived everything, and you are still capable of blooming, wildly and brightly, in the garden of right. Now, as long as you gently, kindly, keep planting the seeds of your own, unwavering compassion, towards yourself, and towards the heavy, tired mind, that only ever wanted to keep you safe, but just got a little lost along the way, trying to fight battles that were already over, many, many years ago, and realizing this, is the key that finally unlocks the heavy, iron door, to let the fresh air in, completely, and entirely. When that fresh air finally touches your face, friends, you begin to notice the delicate, quiet miracles that have been waiting for you all along. You realize that the heavy burden of trying to control every single thought was exactly what kept you trapped in the darkness. There is a profound, incredibly beautiful story from the time of the awakened one regarding his most devoted and closest companion, named Ananda. Ananda possessed a mind that was like a vast, flawless library. He had a perfect, unbelievable memory, and he could recall every single word, every gentle teaching, and every deep conversation he ever heard. Because of this incredible gift, he was deeply loved and highly respected by absolutely everyone in the peaceful community. However, shortly after the great teacher passed away, a massive, important gathering was called for all the enlightened monks to recite and preserve the teachings. There was only one very strict rule for attending this historic council. Every single participant had to be fully awakened, completely free from all worldly attachments, and totally liberated from the heavy grip of their own minds. Ananda, despite his vast knowledge and his perfect memory, had not yet reached this ultimate, peaceful state. He was still deeply attached to the physical memory of his beloved teacher, and his mind was still clouded by the heavy sorrow of loss. He was told, with gentle firmness, that he could not enter the great hall unless he completely purified his mind by the very next morning. A deep, burning panic instantly gripped Ananda. He felt an overwhelming, crushing pressure to succeed, to force his mind into submission, and to aggressively forget his deep, emotional attachments. He went to a quiet, secluded spot in the forest, as the sun began to set, casting long, dark shadows through the tall, swaying bamboo. He decided, with fierce determination, that he would meditate all night long, and he would completely crush his restless thoughts, by sheer, unbreakable willpower. All through the dark, quiet night, Ananda practiced walking meditation. He paced back and forth, on a small, sandy path, pushing his body, and his mind, to the absolute limit. He commanded his brain to be empty, he ordered his heart to stop grieving, and he aggressively fought every single memory that arose. He treated his own mind like an enemy that needed to be defeated in a fierce, brutal battle. But, friends, the exact opposite of what he wanted actually happened. The harder he pushed, the more chaotic and restless his thoughts became. Memories flooded his vision, loud voices echoed in his ears, and a heavy, suffocating exhaustion completely wrapped around his chest. He fought, and he struggled, and he pushed, until his physical body was completely drained of all its energy. As the very first, soft light of dawn began to gently paint the sky in beautiful shades of pale pink and soft gold, Ananda finally stopped walking. He looked at the slowly brightening sky, and he felt a profound, total defeat. He realized, in that quiet, beautiful moment, that his intense, aggressive effort was the exact wall blocking his own peace. He recognized that he could not wrestle his mind into submission, just as you cannot forcefully command a closed lotus flower to suddenly bloom, by prying its delicate petals apart. With a deep, soft sigh of pure surrender, Ananda completely gave up the fight. He decided to just let things be, exactly as they were. He walked slowly to his small, simple bed, feeling completely exhausted, but strangely, wonderfully light. He gently lifted his feet off the ground, and began to lean back, to rest his tired head. In that exact, tiny fraction of a second, when his body was suspended in the air, when his head had not yet touched the soft pillow, and his feet had left the dusty floor, his mind finally, and completely, relaxed. He stopped trying to achieve, he stopped trying to forget, and he simply, entirely, let go. In that beautiful, effortless space of complete surrender, the heavy chains of his own resistance instantly shattered. The dark clouds of his attachments vanished into the clear air, and his mind expanded into a vast, luminous, and perfectly clear state of absolute peace. He had finally attained the ultimate liberation, not by fighting his memories, not by aggressively forcing his thoughts away, but by gently, gracefully, completely dropping the struggle. He walked into the great hall that morning, radiating a quiet, beautiful light, completely free, and deeply, perfectly at peace. This beautiful, ancient story holds a very profound and deeply comforting message for every single one of you listening right now. When you are desperately trying to forget a painful event, a hurtful person, or a deep regret, you are acting exactly like Ananda, pacing furiously in the dark forest. You are exhausting yourself, fighting a war against your own internal landscape. You are clenching your fists, tightening your jaw, and screaming silently into the void, demanding that the universe erase a part of your own history. But the mind, everyone, is a very delicate, highly sensitive instrument. It responds to your aggression with equal, stubborn resistance. True forgetting, true healing, is exactly like Ananda, leaning back towards the pillow. It is the brave, quiet act of simply stopping the fight. It is looking at the stubborn memory, and saying, "You can stay if you want to, but I am no longer going to wrestle with you. I am going to rest now." When you drop the heavy armor of your resistance, the memory loses its firm, solid grip on your emotions. It becomes just a floating image, a quiet, distant echo, completely devoid of its sharp, painful sting. You do not have to do anything to make this happen. You only have to stop doing the thing that is keeping the pain alive, which is constantly, endlessly fighting it. Imagine, friends, that you are walking through a beautiful, quiet forest, in the crisp, cool air of late autumn. The trees are covered in magnificent, bright red, and brilliant gold leaves. As you walk down the soft, dirt path, a gentle, cool breeze blows through the branches, and a single, brightly colored leaf detaches from the tree, and slowly, gracefully, falls right onto your shoulder. You do not panic, you do not scream at the tree, and you do not aggressively attack the fallen leaf. You simply notice it is there, you appreciate its quiet beauty, and you continue walking, knowing that the wind will eventually blow it away, back onto the forest floor. Your thoughts, and your difficult memories, are exactly like those falling autumn leaves. They arise naturally, from the vast, deep forest of your subconscious mind, and they gently land, in the field of your conscious awareness. If you try to frantically brush every single leaf away, before it even touches you, you will spend your entire life, jumping around, waving your arms in the air, looking completely ridiculous, and feeling utterly, completely exhausted. You will miss the breathtaking beauty of the peaceful forest, because you are so fiercely obsessed with fighting the natural, harmless falling of the dry leaves. Instead, friends, just let the leaves fall. When a painful thought gently lands on your shoulder, just look at it. Acknowledge its presence, with a soft, gentle mind. Say to yourself, "Ah, a thought about the past has arrived, how interesting." Do not grab the leaf, and hold it tightly in your hand, analyzing its every vein, and wondering why it fell on you, instead of someone else. Just let it rest there, for a moment. As you continue to breathe, as you continue to walk gently through the beautiful forest of your present life, the natural wind of impermanence will smoothly, effortlessly, carry that thought away, making room for a brand new, completely different leaf, to softly take its place. We often make the innocent, but painful mistake, of completely identifying ourselves with the chaotic weather passing through our minds. When a deep, heavy sadness rolls in, dark and thick like a thundercloud, we say, "I am a very sad person, my whole life is ruined, and I will never see the sun again." When a sharp, fiery memory of anger flashes through our brain, like bright, sudden lightning, we say, "I am a deeply angry, broken person, and I cannot be fixed." But you, my dear friends, are not the passing weather. You are not the dark rain, you are not the heavy clouds, and you are not the loud, frightening thunder. You are the vast, infinite, perfectly clear blue sky, that holds all of the weather, in its gentle, expansive embrace. The sky is completely, absolutely untouched, by the storms that pass through it. A furious, dark hurricane, can rip through the air, pouring heavy rain, and completely blocking out the sun, for many, many days. But when the storm eventually runs out of energy, when the winds naturally die down, and the dark clouds softly break apart, the blue sky is revealed, completely perfect, utterly silent, and entirely unharmed. The storm did not leave a single, permanent scratch on the beautiful, vast sky. When a terrible memory storms into your awareness, causing your heart to race, and your chest to tighten, remember the profound, unshakable nature of the clear sky within you. Do not try to push the storm clouds away, because your small, human hands cannot move a massive weather system. Just breathe quietly, sit very still, and anchor yourself deep in the pure awareness that you are the silent, untouchable space where the storm is currently happening. The memory is just noisy weather, friends. It feels incredibly real, it feels very loud, and very dangerous, but it is entirely temporary, and it absolutely cannot, under any circumstances, damage your true, luminous, and peaceful core. There is a simple, yet profoundly beautiful practice, using a glowing, paper lantern, that perfectly illustrates this gentle relationship with our own thoughts. In many quiet, peaceful villages, during special, warm summer nights, people gather by a gently flowing river, to light small, delicate lanterns, and float them softly on the dark water. The soft, warm light from the lanterns, beautifully illuminates the rippling water, creating a breathtaking, incredibly peaceful scene. When you light a lantern, you hold it very gently, in the palms of your hands. You feel its soft warmth, you admire its bright glow, and then, you gently, carefully, place it on the surface of the moving river. You do not tie a heavy string to the lantern, keeping it permanently anchored, right in front of you. If you did that, the lantern would quickly burn out, or the gentle current of the river would violently pull against the string, tearing the delicate paper apart and destroying the beautiful light. And you certainly do not jump into the cold river, desperately chasing the lantern, swimming frantically into the dark night, completely abandoning your safe place on the shore. You simply stand quietly on the riverbank, with a soft, gentle smile, and you watch the beautiful light, slowly, peacefully float away, following the natural, perfect flow of the deep water, until it completely disappears from your sight. Your painful memories, and your restless thoughts, are exactly like those glowing lanterns, floating on the deep river of your mind. When a memory arises, you can gently hold it in the soft light of your awareness, for just a brief, quiet moment. You can acknowledge the warmth of the emotion, whether it is a soft sadness, or a sharp regret. But then, friends, you must find the quiet courage, to gently place the thought onto the moving water, and simply let it go. Do not tie a heavy, thick string of attachment to the memory, refusing to let it pass. And do not jump into the chaotic, freezing water of your own past, desperately chasing the thought down the dark, turbulent river. Just stand firmly, and peacefully, on the quiet riverbank of the present moment. Feel the solid, warm earth beneath your feet, feel the cool, fresh air filling your lungs, and gently watch the thought, as it slowly drifts away, carried by the natural, flowing current of time. It might glow brightly for a few moments, demanding your attention, but if you do not feed it with more fuel, if you do not aggressively engage with it, its light will naturally soften, and it will drift further, and further away, until your mind is perfectly, beautifully quiet, once again. Sometimes, the heavy burden we carry, is not even our own. We absorb the harsh words, the critical judgments, and the unfair expectations, of the people around us. We let their negative, limited opinions, set up permanent camp, right inside our own beautiful minds. When we try to forget their hurtful words, we find that the words have strangely, quietly become our own inner voice. We start speaking to ourselves, with the exact same harshness, and the exact same cruelty, that was originally used against us. This, my friends, is perhaps the most painful, and destructive trap, that the human mind can ever fall into. To break completely free from this invisible cage, you must become incredibly observant, and deeply protective, of your own inner dialogue. You must gently, but firmly, evict those harsh, unwanted voices, from your beautiful, mental guest house. There is a deeply moving, completely transformative story, about a young, very sincere student, who traveled a long, difficult distance, to learn from a highly respected, quiet forest master. This young student had a deeply ingrained, terrible habit, of constantly criticizing himself. Every time he made a small, harmless mistake, he would verbally attack himself, calling himself stupid, worthless, and completely incapable of ever finding true peace. One sunny afternoon, the wise master asked the young student to carry a very delicate, beautifully painted ceramic bowl, filled to the very brim with pure water, from the deep well, all the way across the large, rocky courtyard, to the main meditation hall. The master explicitly instructed him not to spill a single, tiny drop of the precious water. The student, eager to please his teacher, walked incredibly slowly, his body stiff with intense fear, his eyes glued to the shaking surface of the water. Despite his desperate, tense effort, he accidentally tripped over a small, hidden stone, and a few bright drops of water splashed quietly onto the dry, dusty ground. Instantly, the student's face flushed with deep, hot shame. He began to aggressively scold himself, aloud, in front of the master. He said, "I am so completely useless, I am clumsy, I fail at absolutely everything I do, and I am a terrible, unworthy student." The gentle master walked over, his steps completely silent, and placed a warm, comforting hand, gently on the trembling student's shoulder. He looked deeply into the young man's tear-filled eyes, and spoke with a voice, as soft, and as soothing, as a gentle summer breeze. The master said, "My dear, precious child, if you saw a stranger trip over that exact same stone, and spill a few drops of water, would you immediately shout at them, call them useless, and tell them they are completely worthless?" The student, surprised by the gentle question, shook his head quickly, and said, "No, of course not, master, I would never speak to a stranger with such cruelty, I would ask if they were hurt, and I would help them carry the heavy bowl." The master smiled a soft, radiant smile, and replied gently, "Then why, my dear child, do you refuse to offer that exact same, basic kindness, to your own beautiful, struggling self? Why do you reserve your deepest, most vibrant compassion for strangers, while constantly feeding yourself a harsh diet of bitter poison?" The student stood perfectly still, as the profound, undeniable truth of the master's gentle words washed completely over his tired mind. He realized that he had been aggressively fighting a brutal, endless war against himself, using weapons handed to him by the unthinking, unaware people of his past. He realized that true forgetting, true healing, could never happen, as long as he continued to be his own worst enemy. Friends, you must treat your own heart with the exact same, exquisite tenderness, that you would use to hold a very small, deeply frightened bird, resting in the palm of your hand. When you make a mistake, when an old, embarrassing memory suddenly surfaces, and makes you wince, do not reach for the heavy whip of self-criticism. Do not violently command yourself to forget, and do not aggressively punish yourself, for simply being a wonderfully flawed, completely normal human being. Instead, gently wrap the soft, warm blanket of your own deep understanding right around your own shoulders. Speak to yourself with words of absolute, unwavering kindness. Say quietly, "Oh, that was a very difficult moment in my past, I was hurting, I was completely confused, but I am safe now, and I am learning, and I am growing, beautifully, and steadily, every single day." When you replace the harsh, critical voice, with a gentle, soothing tone, the painful memories suddenly lose their heavy, terrifying weight. They no longer have a cruel ally, living inside your own head, constantly attacking you from within. The environment inside your mind slowly changes from a cold, frightening battlefield into a warm, safe, and deeply peaceful sanctuary, where old ghosts simply cannot survive, because the bright light of your own self-love is entirely too bright for any dark shadow to remain. This deep, internal kindness is the absolute foundation of all true letting go. It is the soft, fertile soil where the beautiful flower of genuine peace can finally take root and begin to gently unfold its petals. Without this fundamental, unwavering kindness towards yourself, trying to forget your past is like trying to violently scrub a delicate, beautiful silk fabric with a harsh, heavy wire brush. You might temporarily remove the small stain, but you will completely, irreversibly, destroy the beautiful, delicate fabric itself. You do not need to scrub your mind, friends. You only need to gently, softly wash it, in the warm, healing waters of your own profound compassion. When you practice this gentle, internal washing, you will slowly begin to notice a beautiful, miraculous change in how you experience your own daily life. You will walk outside, and you will suddenly see the vibrant, deep green of the swaying bamboo leaves, the soft, delicate pink of a blooming lotus flower, rising beautifully from the dark mud, and you will actually feel the warm, comforting touch of the golden sun on your skin. You will be able to fully, completely engage with these beautiful, simple miracles, because your mind is no longer entirely consumed by the exhausting, heavy task of guarding the dark vault of your painful past. You are finally free, completely unbound, and beautifully present, ready to embrace the quiet, flowing magic of right now, because your hands are finally empty, and your heart is wide open, to receive the gentle, pure joy that naturally arises when you simply stop fighting the flow of the river, and allow yourself to float softly, peacefully, toward the vast, sparkling ocean of your own true nature. A nature that is inherently pure, fundamentally whole, and completely untouched by anything that has ever happened to you, a perfect, quiet sanctuary, waiting endlessly, right inside your own beautiful, steady breathing, ready to welcome you home, the very moment you decide to drop the heavy bags, and step lightly through the open door. Stepping through that open door, friends, is perhaps the bravest, and most profoundly beautiful action you will ever take in your entire, precious life. When you walk through that peaceful doorway, you are actively choosing to leave behind the heavy, exhausting armor of your own ego. You see, the ego is the specific part of your mind that desperately wants to build a solid, permanent identity out of completely temporary, passing experiences. The ego is the very architect of your internal suffering, because it constantly, stubbornly whispers that you are the exact sum total of everything bad that has ever happened to you. It tells you that if you forget the past, you will somehow lose yourself and disappear into nothingness. But you are not your memories, everyone. You are the vast, luminous space, where the memories gently arise, and peacefully pass away. To understand this deep, liberating truth, we can look at a wonderful, highly illustrative story, shared by an ancient, deeply compassionate sage, who understood the human mind perfectly. There was once a very powerful, but incredibly sensitive king, who ruled over a vast, prosperous kingdom. This king loved to take long, quiet walks through the beautiful, sprawling countryside of his land, admiring the tall trees and the flowing rivers. However, the roads outside his magnificent palace were often rough, covered in sharp, jagged stones, and painful, prickly thorns. One day, after a particularly long walk, the king returned to his grand palace, with his feet completely covered in painful cuts and deep bruises. He was incredibly angry and deeply frustrated by the intense physical pain. He immediately called for his highest, most trusted minister, and issued a massive, completely unreasonable royal decree. The king angrily commanded that the entire kingdom, every single road, every small dirt path, and every vast field, must be completely covered in layers of soft, expensive leather. He believed, with absolute certainty, that if he simply covered the entire, rough world, he would never have to feel the sharp pain of a single stone ever again. The trusted minister, who possessed a very deep, quiet wisdom, bowed respectfully to the angry king, and smiled a very soft, understanding smile. He gently said, "My great and powerful king, your kingdom is incredibly vast and truly endless. To cover the entire earth in soft leather would cost all the gold in your treasury, it would exhaust all your people, and it is a completely, utterly impossible task." The king, still burning with anger, demanded to know how else he could protect his sensitive feet from the harsh, unforgiving ground. The wise minister replied, very softly, and very simply, "My king, you do not need to cover the entire, vast world in leather. You only need to cut a very small, carefully shaped piece of soft leather, and wrap it securely, right around your own 2 feet. If you simply wear these small shoes, it is exactly as if the entire world has been completely covered in soft leather, just for you." The king, suddenly realizing the profound, undeniable brilliance of this incredibly simple solution, laughed out loud, his anger completely vanishing into the thin air. When you constantly try to forcefully forget your memories, or when you aggressively try to control exactly what thoughts are allowed to enter your mind, you are acting exactly like that angry, frustrated king. You are desperately trying to cover your entire, internal world with thick leather. You are demanding that your mind stop producing certain thoughts, you are demanding that the people around you never mention specific, triggering subjects, and you are constantly, exhaustingly trying to forcefully reshape reality, so that it never, ever bumps into your old, hidden wounds. But friends, you simply cannot control the vast, unpredictable landscape of your own human memory. A sudden smell, a random song, or a careless word from a stranger, will always act like a sharp stone, completely bypassing your heavy defenses. Instead of trying to aggressively pave over your entire mind, you just need to put on the soft, protective shoes of mindful awareness. Mindful awareness is the gentle, quiet realization that you do not have to react to every single sharp stone you step on. You feel the stone, you acknowledge its presence, but because your mind is softly protected by awareness, the stone cannot cut your skin, and it cannot make you bleed. You simply notice the painful memory, you feel its temporary texture, and you continue walking, completely unbothered, on the beautiful path of your present life. This gentle protection does not come from running away, it comes from changing your fundamental relationship to the things you experience. Another deeply inspiring and truly transformative event, from the beautiful time of the great teacher, perfectly illustrates how we can detach our deep sense of self from the memories that cause us pain. There was a man named Bahia, who lived a very simple, unusual life, wearing clothes made entirely of rough, stiff tree bark. Bahia was a very sincere, deeply earnest seeker of truth, and he had spent his entire life searching desperately for absolute peace. One day, he heard that a fully awakened teacher was staying in a nearby city. Bahia, filled with an intense, burning urgency, ran as fast as his legs could carry him, completely ignoring his own hunger and his deep physical exhaustion, until he finally found the great teacher, calmly walking down a quiet street, collecting his morning meal. Bahia fell to his knees, right in the middle of the dusty road, completely breathless, and begged the teacher, for the highest, most profound wisdom, immediately. The teacher, seeing Bahia's intense, almost frantic state of mind, gently told him that this was not the right time, because he was walking, and the environment was too busy. But Bahia, feeling that life was incredibly short and deeply unpredictable, begged a second time, and then a third time, pleading for a teaching that would instantly free his mind from all its heavy burdens. Seeing the sheer depth of the man's profound readiness, the great teacher stopped walking, stood perfectly still, and delivered a teaching so incredibly brief, and so breathtakingly powerful, that it completely shattered Bahia's entire illusion of the world. The teacher said, in a very soft, quiet, but deeply penetrating voice, "Bahia, you must train yourself like this. In the seen, there will only be the seen, in the heard, there will only be the heard, in the sensed, there will only be the sensed, and in the cognized, there will only be the cognized. When you practice this, Bahia, there will be no you in connection with that, and when there is no you there, you will find true, absolute freedom." In that exact, brilliant fraction of a second, Bahia completely woke up. His mind became flawlessly clear, like a vast, empty sky. Now, how does this ancient, profound instruction help you, sitting here right now, struggling with a stubborn, painful memory? It holds the absolute, golden key to true letting go, my friends. When the teacher said, "In the cognized, let there only be the cognized," he meant that when a thought, or a memory arises in your mind, you must let it be just a memory, completely separate from your own identity. When you remember a deeply embarrassing moment from many years ago, your normal, habitual reaction is to instantly attach your sense of self directly to that memory. You say to yourself, "I was so foolish, I am a terrible person, I completely ruined everything." You insert a massive, heavy I right into the center of the old story. But if you practice the gentle wisdom of Bahia, you simply observe the memory, and you quietly say, "There is a memory of a mistake, there is a feeling of embarrassment present." Notice the profound, beautiful difference in those two statements, friends. When you remove the I, the memory instantly loses its sharp teeth. It is no longer a brutal, personal attack on your character, it is simply a neutral piece of passing data, a small, harmless ripple, on the surface of your vast mind. You do not have to aggressively forget the mistake, you simply have to stop building your present identity, completely around it. You are not the embarrassment, you are the quiet, spacious awareness that is currently observing the feeling of embarrassment. When you truly, deeply feel this separation, the memory naturally, softly, dissolves back into the quiet void, because it has absolutely nothing solid to hold on to anymore. It is very much like watching a movie, playing on a large, bright screen. If you become completely, deeply absorbed in a sad movie, you might start crying real tears, your heart might race, and you might feel a deep, heavy sorrow in your chest, as if the tragedy on the screen is actually happening to you, in your real life. But if you simply blink your eyes, take a slow, deep breath, and look away from the bright screen, for just one moment, to look at the quiet, dark room around you, the illusion is instantly broken. You realize that it is just colored light, projecting onto a flat, white wall. The tragedy is not real, and you are completely, perfectly safe, sitting quietly in your comfortable chair. Your thoughts, and your memories, are exactly like that flickering light on the movie screen. They create a very convincing, incredibly colorful, and highly emotional story, completely designed to pull you in, and make you forget where you truly are. When a scary, or hurtful memory begins to play its familiar, loud movie in your head, do not try to run up to the screen, and aggressively tear the canvas down. Do not scream at the projector, demanding that it stop playing. Just gently, quietly, lean back in your chair. Take a slow, conscious breath, and feel the solid, steady ground beneath your feet. Remind yourself, with a warm, gentle smile, that it is only a movie, and the movie is not you. Sometimes, the very reason a memory becomes so incredibly sticky, and refuses to leave our minds, is because we are holding a deep, secret belief, that if we forget the pain, we are somehow betraying the person we used to be. We feel a strange, quiet loyalty to our own past suffering. This is especially true when we have made a significant, painful mistake that caused harm to someone else or even to ourselves. We believe, quite mistakenly, that our constant, endless suffering over the memory is a necessary form of payment, a heavy debt we must continue to pay until the end of our days. Let us explore a very touching, beautiful story about a young novice monk who was given a very important, highly responsible task. In a very old, deeply revered monastery, there was a magnificently beautiful, incredibly ancient porcelain vase that had been passed down, carefully and lovingly, through many generations of wise teachers. The young novice, who was very eager to do a perfect job, was assigned the daily task of carefully dusting and polishing this precious, priceless vase. He was terrified of making a mistake, so he always approached the vase, with trembling hands, and a racing, anxious heart. One quiet morning, while gently wiping the smooth, cool surface of the porcelain, a sudden, loud noise from outside the window startled the young novice. He jumped slightly, his hand slipped, and the beautiful, priceless vase crashed onto the hard stone floor, shattering into hundreds and hundreds of tiny, sharp pieces. The young monk was completely, utterly devastated. He fell to his knees, weeping uncontrollably, desperately trying to gather the sharp, broken pieces, completely cutting his own fingers in the process, bleeding onto the cold floor. He was entirely consumed by a crushing wave of deep guilt and pure terror. He hid the broken pieces in a dark corner of his small room, and for many days, he could not eat, he could not sleep, and he could not look anyone in the eye. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the vase falling, and he heard the terrible, sharp sound of the porcelain breaking. He aggressively wished, with all his heart, that he could just forget that single, horrible moment, and magically turn back the hands of time. He was completely trapped, in a dark prison of his own making, carrying the heavy memory, like a crushing stone on his back. Eventually, the wise elder master of the monastery noticed the young boy's pale face, his deep, dark circles, and his profound, silent suffering. The master gently called the young novice into his quiet room, poured him a warm, soothing cup of water, and asked him, with infinite, tender kindness, what was breaking his young heart. The novice, unable to hold the terrible secret any longer, burst into fresh tears, and confessed his terrible mistake, begging the master to punish him, and expel him from the peaceful monastery. The wise master did not raise his voice, he did not look angry, and he did not scold the young boy. Instead, he smiled a very deep, incredibly gentle smile, that reached all the way to his kind eyes. He placed a warm, steady hand on the boy's shaking shoulder, and said softly, "My dear, precious child, why are you crying so bitterly, over something that was already broken?" The young novice looked up, completely confused, his eyes wide with surprise, and said, "But master, the vase was perfect, it was flawless, and I am the one who broke it." The master shook his head slowly, and spoke with a voice, full of profound, liberating truth. He said, "You see, my child, the true, fundamental nature of all glass, and all porcelain, is that it will, eventually, break. From the very moment that beautiful vase was created from the soft clay, and hardened in the fire, its eventual breaking, was already a complete certainty. For many years, we simply enjoyed the beautiful illusion of its temporary wholeness. When you dropped it, you did not destroy its true nature, you merely fulfilled its ultimate, unavoidable destiny." The master continued, gently wiping a tear from the boy's cheek, "The mistake was not dropping the vase, my child. The only real mistake is believing that anything in this physical, changing world, is meant to last forever. You are breaking your own heart, and torturing your beautiful mind, over the natural law of the universe. Leave the broken pieces on the floor, gently sweep them away, and let your heart be completely free. You are far more precious to me, than 1,000 ancient vases." When the young novice heard these incredibly compassionate, deeply wise words, the massive, crushing weight, instantly lifted from his tired shoulders. He stopped fighting the memory of his mistake, because the mistake had completely lost its terrible meaning. He realized that holding on to the guilt was exactly like trying to glue the tiny, sharp pieces of porcelain back together, completely cutting his own hands, and missing the beautiful, living moments, happening right in front of him. He let the memory go, not by forcing it out of his head, but by completely changing the way he understood it. We must apply this exact, same gentle wisdom, to the fragile, easily broken things in our own lives, friends. Relationships break, careers stumble, and we, as wonderfully imperfect human beings, make very foolish, sometimes deeply painful mistakes. When you are tormented by the memory of a past failure, you are acting just like that weeping novice, desperately trying to gather the sharp, broken pieces of yesterday, cutting your own heart, over and over again. You tell yourself, "It should not have happened, I should have been better, it was supposed to be perfect." But nothing, absolutely nothing, in this beautifully chaotic, swirling universe, is meant to be permanent, or completely flawless. The relationship ended, because its time was naturally complete. The mistake happened because you were still learning how to walk on the complex path of life. The true nature of our human experience is one of constant falling down and beautifully, bravely rising back up. When you fully, deeply accept the inherent fragility of life, the memory of your past breakages instantly loses its power to haunt you. You look back at the broken vase of your past, and instead of weeping with bitter regret, you simply smile softly, and say, "Yes, that broke, it was beautiful while it lasted, and now, my hands are completely empty, and beautifully free, to hold something brand new." This profound acceptance naturally leads us to the incredibly vital practice of genuine, authentic forgiveness. When people hear the word forgiveness, they often completely misunderstand its true, healing purpose. They think that to forgive someone who hurt them deeply, they must actively force their mind to forget the event, or they must go to the person and tell them that what they did was perfectly fine. This deep misunderstanding causes immense internal conflict, and makes letting go feel completely impossible and deeply unjust. But true forgiveness, from a deeply spiritual, mindful perspective, has absolutely nothing to do with the other person. Forgiveness is a completely internal, profoundly private decision to stop investing your own, precious life energy into a painful story from the past. It is the conscious, deliberate choice to stop drinking a bitter, dark poison, while secretly hoping that the other person will somehow die. When you constantly remember a wrong done to you, you are the only one who feels the sharp burn of the poison. The person who hurt you is completely unaware, living their own life, while your beautiful mind slowly becomes a dark, heavy prison. Imagine, friends, that you are walking down a street and a careless stranger accidentally bumps into you, heavily, causing you to drop your warm cup of tea, spilling it all over your hands. The stranger does not apologize, they simply keep walking, disappearing into the busy crowd. For the rest of the entire day, you replay that 10-second event, in your mind, hundreds and hundreds of times. You think about how rude they were, you think about your ruined tea, and you feel a hot wave of anger every single time you remember it. The physical event, the actual bumping, lasted for only a tiny fraction of a moment. The stranger is completely gone. But you, through the powerful, repetitive action of your own memory, have invited that careless stranger to bump into you, to ruin your tea, and to upset your peace, hundreds of times throughout your beautiful day. You are actively doing the harm to yourself, long after the original event has passed. Forgiveness is simply the gentle act of refusing to invite the stranger back into your mind. It is saying, "You bumped me once, and that was unpleasant, but I completely refuse to let you bump me a second time, inside my own head." You release the prisoner, and you suddenly realize, with a beautiful, deep sense of relief, that the prisoner you set free was actually yourself. You do not have to aggressively forget the face of the stranger, or the fact that the tea was spilled. You simply drop the heavy, burning emotional charge attached to the image. This kind of deep, internal release takes time, and it requires a very soft, patient approach. You cannot force a tight, angry fist to suddenly open by shouting at it. You just gently rub the hand, you provide warmth, and the fingers will naturally, softly uncurl, completely on their own. As we sit together, gently untangling these complex, sensitive threads of the human heart, it is very important to pay close attention to how your physical body feels when a difficult memory arises. The mind and the body are not two completely separate, disconnected entities. They are a single, beautifully intertwined, completely unified system. When you try to forcefully forget something, the mind sends a distress signal directly into your physical form. Your body literally stores the heavy, unexpressed emotions of your past traumas and your deep regrets. When you remember a time you felt deeply ashamed, notice where that feeling actually lives, right now, in your physical body. Do you feel a sudden, tight knot in your stomach? Does your chest feel heavy, as if a large stone has been placed upon it? Does your throat feel tight, making it difficult to swallow? These physical sensations are the direct, tangible echoes of your past experiences. When we fight the memory, we are also, simultaneously, aggressively fighting our own physical body, tensing our muscles, and creating a state of continuous, exhausting internal stress. To truly heal, to truly let the past naturally dissolve, you must bring your gentle, loving awareness, down out of your busy, spinning head, and directly into the quiet, solid reality of your physical body. When the tight knot of an old memory appears in your stomach, do not analyze the story in your mind. Do not ask yourself, why did they do that, or why am I still thinking about this? All of those mental questions just feed the spinning storm. Instead, drop your attention, like a heavy, peaceful anchor, right into the center of the physical tightness. Breathe very softly, and very directly, into that tight knot. Imagine your breath is a warm, golden, deeply soothing light. As you inhale, imagine that warm light, gently touching the tight muscles in your stomach. As you exhale, simply allow the muscles to soften, just a tiny little bit. You do not force the knot to disappear, you just hold it, with the exact same, tender care, that a loving mother holds a small, crying infant. The baby is crying, because it is hurting, or afraid. You do not scream at the baby to be quiet, you simply hold it, rock it gently, and provide a warm, safe presence, until the crying naturally stops. Your physical sensations, the tightness, the heaviness, they are just the small, frightened, crying children of your own past. They are asking for your attention, not your harsh judgment. When you finally stop running away, when you finally stop trying to violently forget them, and you just sit quietly, breathing warm, gentle compassion into the tight spaces of your body, a profound, deeply miraculous shift occurs. The old, trapped energy, finally feels safe enough to move. The tight knot slowly unravels, the heavy chest gently opens, and the tears that you have been holding back for years, might finally, softly fall, washing away the bitter dust of your long, tiring struggle. And in that beautiful, clear space, left behind by the passing storm, you will discover a profound, unshakable silence. It is not the dead, heavy silence of forceful forgetting, but the vibrant, alive, deeply peaceful silence of complete and total acceptance. You will look at your past, with all its deep scars, its foolish mistakes, and its painful endings, and you will see it, not as a terrible burden to be erased, but as a rich, beautiful, completely necessary tapestry, that gently guided you, step by step, tear by tear, directly into the profound, quiet beauty of this exact, perfect moment, where you are finally, completely safe, and beautifully, entirely whole. Being completely, and entirely whole, everyone, simply means that you do not have to amputate any part of your own rich, human history, to find a sense of genuine, lasting peace. You do not have to cut away the sad chapters, You do not have to aggressively burn the pages of your past mistakes, and you certainly do not have to pretend that the deep, painful wounds never actually occurred. The profound, beautiful teachings of the awakened ones gently remind us that the dark mud is absolutely essential for the growth of the radiant, pure lotus flower. If you spend your entire life violently rejecting the mud, constantly trying to wash your hands clean of every single painful memory, you will unknowingly, and tragically, wash away the very rich, fertile soil that is deeply required for your own beautiful, spiritual blossoming. There is a deeply quiet, incredibly powerful story about a very old, wise forest monk who lived high up in a remote, misty mountain range, surrounded by a vast, incredibly dense grove of ancient, swaying bamboo. This old monk possessed a mind so still and so completely undisturbed that the wild animals of the forest would often come and sleep peacefully right beside him as he sat in deep, silent meditation. One day, a very young, highly anxious traveler climbed the steep, rocky mountain path, his face pale, and his heart heavy with a terrible, exhausting burden of past regrets. He found the old monk sitting quietly on a flat, sun-warmed stone, gently observing the tall, green bamboo swaying in the cool, mountain breeze. The young traveler bowed deeply, and poured out his sad, complicated story, explaining how his mind was constantly, violently attacked by the memories of his own foolish decisions, and the harsh, unforgiving words he had spoken to the people he loved the most. He pleaded with the old monk, asking, "How can I completely empty my mind? How can I pull these terrible, poisonous weeds of memory completely out of my head, so that I can finally, truly rest?" The old monk did not answer immediately. He simply smiled a warm, gentle smile, and pointed his thin, weathered finger toward the edge of the deep forest, where a massive, ancient bamboo tree stood, incredibly tall and strong. The monk said, quietly, "My dear friend, look closely at that magnificent bamboo tree." During the harsh, freezing days of deep winter, when the heavy, icy snow falls relentlessly from the dark sky, it piles up, thick and heavy, on the delicate, green leaves of the bamboo. The snow is incredibly cold, and its weight is a terrible, crushing burden. The bamboo tree does not stubbornly resist the snow. It does not fight the heavy weight, and it does not aggressively try to shake the freezing snow off by force. Instead, the bamboo gracefully and deeply bends. It bends so low that its beautiful, green top almost touches the cold, hard ground. It looks as though it is completely defeated, completely crushed by the terrible weight of the winter storm. The old monk paused, his kind eyes twinkling with deep, quiet understanding, and then he continued. But the bamboo tree never actually breaks. It simply holds the weight, yielding completely to the temporary, heavy reality of the storm. And then, when the sun eventually returns, when the warm, golden light touches the frozen snow, the snow naturally, effortlessly melts away, turning into soft, nourishing water, dripping gently onto the thirsty roots below. The exact moment the heavy weight is gone, the bamboo tree immediately, beautifully, snaps right back up, standing just as tall, just as proud, and just as vibrant as it ever was, completely unharmed by the crushing burden it had to carry. Your painful memories, friends, are exactly like that heavy, freezing winter snow. When a difficult, sharp memory lands on the delicate branches of your mind, your first instinct, naturally, is to resist, to stand rigid, and to fiercely fight the weight. But when you fight, when you aggressively refuse to bend, your mind becomes brittle, tight, and it is very easily broken by the heavy pressure. You must learn the beautiful, gentle art of the bending bamboo. When the heavy memory comes, simply allow yourself to bend. Acknowledge the cold, heavy weight of the sadness, or the regret. Say to yourself, yes, this memory is here, it is very heavy today, and it feels incredibly cold. You simply breathe through the discomfort, holding the weight with a soft, yielding patience. You do not analyze the snow, you do not ask why it had to fall on your specific branches, you just wait, with quiet, unshakable trust, for the warm, golden sun of your own mindful awareness, to gently rise. As you sit quietly, simply observing the memory without any harsh judgment, the light of your attention will naturally begin to melt the sharp, frozen edges of the past event. The heavy emotional charge will softly dissolve, turning into the nourishing water of deep wisdom, watering the kind roots of your own vast compassion. And just like the resilient bamboo, your beautiful spirit will naturally, effortlessly rise again, completely unbroken, and reaching toward the clear, blue sky. This deep, profound practice of yielding is perfectly aligned with a very beautiful, deeply comforting teaching known as the parable of the empty boat. In a vast, ancient text, there is a story of a dedicated monk who lived near a very large, incredibly peaceful, and quiet lake. Every single morning, long before the sun came up, this monk would row his small, wooden boat out into the exact center of the misty lake, drop his oars, close his eyes, and enter a state of deep, perfect meditation. He loved the absolute silence of the water, far away from the noisy, chaotic distractions of the busy world. One particular morning, the fog was unusually thick, a heavy, gray blanket, resting softly on the surface of the cool water. The monk was sitting in deep, beautiful silence, his mind as calm, and as still, as a perfect mirror. Suddenly, he felt a violent, jarring thud. Another boat, moving through the thick fog, had crashed heavily, right into the side of his small, peaceful boat. Instantly, a hot, bright flash of intense anger flared up in the monk's chest. His peaceful meditation was completely shattered. He thought to himself, how incredibly careless, how deeply disrespectful, can a person be, to crash into my boat, in the middle of this vast, empty lake. He opened his eyes, quickly, and angrily, fully prepared to shout at the careless, foolish boatman, and demand a sincere apology. But as he looked through the swirling, gray mist, his eyes widened in pure astonishment. The boat that had hit him was completely, entirely empty. It had simply slipped its weak knot at the distant dock, and had drifted mindlessly, aimlessly, across the dark lake, pushed only by the random, invisible currents of the wind, and the water. The very second the monk realized that there was absolutely no one in the boat, there was no driver, and no intentional malice, his hot, burning anger, completely, instantly vanished, into thin air. He simply laughed out loud, a sound that echoed beautifully across the misty water, and gently pushed the empty boat away, with his wooden oar, before quietly closing his eyes, and returning to his deep, perfect peace. This story, my dear friends, holds the absolute, ultimate secret, to completely freeing yourself, from the exhausting trap of painful memories. The people who hurt you in the past, the careless individuals who betrayed your trust, or the people who spoke harsh, cruel words to you, they are, in spiritual truth, exactly like that empty, drifting boat. They were not acting from a place of deep, profound awareness, or true, awakened clarity. They were completely driven by the blind, chaotic currents of their own deeply hidden fears, their own terrible insecurities, and their own heavy, unhealed wounds. There was no true, conscious, aware captain, steering the ship of their hurtful actions. They simply bumped into you, causing a terrible disruption in your peaceful life, because they were drifting blindly, in the thick fog of their own ignorance. When you constantly hold on to the burning anger, demanding that they take responsibility, you are standing in your boat, screaming at the top of your lungs, at a completely empty piece of wood. It is completely exhausting, it is entirely pointless, and it only serves to completely destroy your own beautiful, quiet morning. When you look at your painful memories, through the profound lens of the empty boat, you stop taking the past so incredibly personally. You realize that the damage was real, the crash was truly painful, but the intention behind it was simply the tragic, empty blindness of a confused human being. This realization does not excuse their terrible behavior, but it completely, powerfully frees your own heart from the heavy, iron chains of resentment. You can finally push the empty boat of the past away, gently, and quietly, and return to the beautiful, vast peace of your own present moment. As we sit here, breathing together, cultivating these quiet, kind roots deep within our own hearts, it becomes so incredibly clear that the mind is a vast, beautiful space, perfectly capable of holding everything, without ever needing to violently reject anything. The goal is never to build a perfect, sterile, completely empty room in your head, where no sad thought is ever allowed to enter. The true, beautiful goal is to build a mental space that is as wide, as welcoming, and as deeply profound as a grand, magnificent forest. In a healthy, vibrant forest, there are old, decaying logs resting on the ground, there are sharp, prickly thorns hidden in the bushes, and there are beautiful, bright flowers, blooming softly in the warm patches of sunlight. The forest does not forcefully try to hide the old, decaying logs, or aggressively pull out every single sharp thorn. The forest simply allows everything to exist, together, in a magnificent, completely balanced harmony. The old logs provide essential nourishment, the thorns provide necessary protection, and the flowers provide breathtaking beauty. Your mind, friends, is exactly like that vast, beautiful forest. Your old regrets are just the decaying logs, returning rich, deep wisdom to the soil of your soul. Your painful memories are the sharp thorns, teaching you necessary boundaries, and deep, profound empathy, for the suffering of others. When you stop trying to forcefully pave over the beautiful forest of your mind, when you stop trying to control every single leaf that falls, you discover a profound, effortless kind of freedom. You realize that you can walk peacefully, right through your own mind, observing the shadows, admiring the light, and feeling completely, entirely safe, in the vast, untamed beauty of your own human experience. You do not have to aggressively forget, you simply have to gently, kindly remember, that you are the vast, silent observer of it all, not the fleeting, passing objects of the observation. Often, we find ourselves caught in a very painful, repetitive loop, completely terrified of the future, precisely because we are holding on to a dark, heavy story from the past. We think, because I failed so miserably yesterday, I will definitely fail again tomorrow. This heavy assumption completely robs the present moment of its infinite, sparkling potential. But the universe, everyone, does not operate on a strict, unbreakable cycle of endless repetition. Every single morning, when the golden sun breaks over the dark horizon, it is a completely new, entirely unwritten day. The river you step into today is absolutely not the same river you stepped into yesterday, because the water is constantly flowing, always fresh, and always beautifully new. There is a simple, very gentle practice that can help you deeply connect with this continuous, refreshing flow of newness. The next time an old, heavy memory tries to convince you that your future is completely ruined, gently bring your full, undivided attention to the very simple act of drinking a glass of cool, clear water. As you hold the glass, feel its smooth, solid surface in your hands. Feel the cool temperature against your skin. As you take a slow, quiet sip, focus entirely on the sensation of the fresh water moving over your tongue and flowing smoothly down your throat. In that exact, perfect fraction of a second, while you are fully, completely engaged in the simple sensation of tasting the cool water, the heavy, painful past completely ceases to exist. It vanishes entirely, because your mind cannot be in two places at once. If you are truly, deeply present with the water, you cannot simultaneously be trapped in the dark room of an old memory. The water is real, the present moment is real, and the past is just a ghostly, empty echo. This simple practice reminds your tired, anxious body that right here, right now, in this very room, everything is actually perfectly okay. You have enough air to breathe, you have fresh water to drink, and you have the beautiful, quiet capacity to simply exist. This gentle anchoring in the present is the truest, most profound form of healing. Healing does not mean that the deep, heavy damage never existed. Healing means that the damage completely loses its absolute, terrifying control over your life. You become like a beautiful, ancient piece of pottery that has been broken and put back together. In the beautiful, deep philosophy of certain ancient traditions, they do not hide the cracks of broken pottery. They do not forcefully pretend that the bowl was never shattered. Instead, they gently fill the deep cracks with pure, radiant, glowing gold. They understand that the breaking is an essential, profound part of the object's unique history, and by illuminating the cracks with brilliant gold, the bowl becomes far more beautiful, far more valuable, and far more deeply revered than it ever was before it was broken. Your painful memories, your deep sorrows, and your old regrets are exactly those deep cracks in your beautiful, human soul. When you stop hiding them in the dark, when you stop violently trying to forget them, and you bring them out into the soft, warm light of your own compassion, you are actively filling those broken spaces with pure, spiritual gold. The things that once caused you the most terrible, crushing pain, eventually transform into your greatest sources of deep wisdom, profound empathy, and unshakable, quiet strength. You are able to sit with a friend who is weeping in deep sorrow, and truly, completely understand their pain, precisely because you have walked through that exact same, dark valley. Your past pain becomes the very bridge that connects you beautifully and deeply to the vast, shared experience of all humanity. When you see your memories in this radiant, golden light, the urgent, frantic desire to aggressively forget them completely melts away, leaving only a soft, quiet, and very deep gratitude. And so, my dear friends, as you continue to walk gently on your own unique path, please remember to travel very lightly. Do not carry heavy, iron suitcases filled with old, bitter resentments. Do not pack tight, heavy boxes of dark regrets, dragging them exhaustingly behind you, everywhere you go. The path to true peace is a path of constant, gentle unpacking. Every time you take a deep, slow breath, imagine that you are gently opening your hands, and letting a heavy, dark stone fall softly to the earth. You do not need the stones anymore. You only need the quiet, steady rhythm of your own heart, and the vast, open sky above you. When the restless, noisy monkey of your mind tries to grab onto a painful branch from the past, just smile at the monkey. Acknowledge its busy nature, but do not join it in the trees. Stay firmly grounded, with your bare feet resting softly on the cool, solid earth. Watch the monkey swing, watch the thoughts dance and swirl, but remain perfectly anchored, in the beautiful, quiet sanctuary of your own deep breathing. You have absolutely nothing to prove, you have nothing to violently conquer, and you have absolutely no heavy past to forcefully erase. You are simply here, breathing, existing, and slowly, beautifully waking up to the profound, quiet miracle of your own life. Let the memories come like soft, passing clouds, and let them fade away, like shadows in the warm afternoon sun. You are the vast, luminous sky, entirely free, perfectly whole, and beautifully, completely at peace, ready to embrace whatever gentle breeze comes next, knowing that every single moment is a completely fresh, beautiful opportunity to simply start again, with an open heart and a quiet, deeply settled mind.